Is this the fucking mic? This is exactly what I should be doing.
What's up, and welcome to this week's episode of The Drop, your source for all things NFT and crypto art, as well as upcoming drops by notable people in the Mograph industry. I'm Matt Milstead. Joining me, as always, is Dave Koss, and joining us this week is GERNGE, also Billy Chitkin. So, however you know
Both.
Matt, right?
GERNGE and Billy are here today.
Yes.
Depending on which podcast you listen to, is which name goes first.
Exactly.
Right. That's funny. So, let's go ahead and get into, we got a lot to talk about today because Billy's here. We're going to talk NFTs. We're going to talk lots of stuff. So let's go ahead and get the big drops out of the way.
Sure.
And some of the community drops as well. So this week on Nifty Gateway, you got Nifty Gateway and Maker's Place regular, Jose Delbo. Former DC artist, is doing a drop called Delbo Poker Open. So he's doing like a Bored Apes inspired, I guess, game of poker, open edition and stuff like that. So yeah, cool. He's very popular in the NFT space. He's been around for a while. So, you know, if you want to get on that, that's tonight. Then on the 7th, tomorrow, Gabriel Gimenez. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but he's got a piece. The piece on his Instagram is like a spoof off of girl with a pearl earring, you know. And so I think this is one of the pieces that he's doing for his drop tomorrow. So yeah. Next up, December 8th, we've got Vils. Vils is doing a drop. I can't remember.
It is an explosion of some sort.
Explosion, yeah. And stuff. Looks didn't they do this? Was this the same one that we were talking about the other day?
Oh gosh.
Like we weren't sure whether it was real or fake or whatever. Oh yeah, there it is.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
super cool stuff. It's really pretty. I love this stuff. So yeah, it looks really neat. So that's on the 8th. On the 9th, Andreas Vanderstedt is doing a drop. Man, I love this work. Yeah,
Them
like
lathes though.
and rotations and stuff like that, and you know, that cool architectural stuff, like all of it.
Ooh,
very
nice
pretty work. Yeah. So collectors and open editions, that's cool. And then on the 10th, we've got Ted Chin. Ted Chin is doing a drop. Very, you know, what's the word?
Ethereal.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I agree.
Dolphins and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Dolphins in the sky.
Dolphins in the sky. Giant.
Ted's work is pretty interesting because it's like a mix of like photography, but then there's obviously like composited elements into it.
Right.
Like, you know, it'll be like a tree line with like a massive elephant like comped into the sky or whatever, which is a cool blend.
Yeah, Ted's got some great work. Super cool work. I really like it.
And then not listed on Nifty's site yet, just because I think of like the way that their calendar is set up. On the 11th, Ness has a drop.
Oh, sweet.
That's Saturday. Yeah,
awesome.
So
Thanks for letting us know about that. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
bought into. Yeah, I'm bought into his sort of ecosystem now, so that's something that I need to follow, you know, closely.
Yeah, you bought one of the keys, right?
Yeah, I got one of his collector keys.
That's
it
awesome.
was an expensive JPEG, which hopefully will, one, serve as a store of value in the event that I need to liquidate it, which I hope I don't need to. But then two, the key gets you access to when he does drops.
Yeah.
The key, like usually his Nifty stuff is like each piece you hold of his gets you an entry, and then sometimes there'll be like a separate raffle pool for key holders.
Yeah.
And then like when he does stuff on OpenSea specifically, that's for key holders. So it's like kind of an interesting, I've really liked following the way that he approaches the sort of mechanic and like gamification of NFT and crypto art. It's obviously, it's all like motion graphics. It's like, you know, it's renders. It's not like a game. So when I say gamification, I don't mean like a literal game, but like
I'm with you.
The mechanics and like what you get as somebody who follows his work, like picking up on like the little stuff, like how he does drawings and like, at least for me, as I'm starting to ramp up myself, it's a really interesting case study, you know, his work to follow, like, his first drop, I believe, was part of a group drop on Nifty, a gallery thing. I think it was ABV Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was maybe February or March of this year, and then he's done a handful of individual drops on Nifty since then, and obviously other stuff on other platforms and like OpenSea and all that, and sort of learning through his work, learning more about like how to structure your collections if you're going to be taking this seriously for like a long-term sort of plan, like at least I'm intending to. There are considerations that you can do to set yourself up better in the beginning, like making a collection on OpenSea, minting stuff through there, because like when you then later when you transition into doing edition stuff, it like OpenSea works better for tracking stuff like floor and historical pricing structure versus just like a list of one of ones that are all sold on like say your foundation page or even like super rare. Like, you can look at the stats of somebody as an individual artist who's selling one of ones, but an OpenSea collection is an interesting way to aggregate all of that data, and like depending on different smart contract related stuff that I'm still trying to learn and kind of get up to speed on, different ways of minting things on different sites, like those can all sort of integrate together, and then additionally the transferring items between OpenSea and Nifty. If you do a lot of stuff on Nifty, there are other considerations that you want to try to get underway for that transfer back and forth between Nifty and OpenSea, because like, a lot of, whether you realize it or not, as somebody who follows Nifty, there are just as many pieces from Nifty drops on OpenSea that people have withdrawn, and that sort of has its own pricing structure, like an open edition from a Blake Catherine or a like Fuck Render or whoever, like there might be a different sort of economy on one platform versus the other, and those have different floors sometimes, and so there's such a crazy amount more than just like I'm just gonna sit down and like noodle around in Cinema and like spit out a render and then go like throw it up onto my Rarible or like Foundation or whatever, which to me it's exciting because it's like a whole new thing to learn, and it's not like I'm going to learn Python or I'm going to learn Houdini.
Right.
It's something like completely like not, I mean, it's on the computer, but it's not like the art itself. So it's been like kind of a new, interesting hook to sort of like get up to speed on,
Yeah. I wish I had minted my foundation piece, my latest one, on OpenSea. Like, I don't know. I feel like it.
I feel like than use on Foundation, right?
Yeah, rather on Foundation, because I feel like a lot of collectors aren't necessarily going to Rarible or Foundation. Like they're sticking with the super rares, the makers places, and the open seas. I
you have to
know.
have a following already, and then say, "Here's my thing," and it's on Foundation.
Right. I mean, don't know.
That's kind of the case with all of the platforms. Some of them do better job than others in terms of marketing. Like Super Rare, for example, has a front page which has a variety of search filters. Like you can sort it by like auctions ending soonest, so that way, like, if you're just a collector and you're just kind of kicking around, as I assume they do for entertainment reasons, like, hey, let's just see what art's, like up today and like ending within the next hour or whatever, and they can throw bids on that. I believe Foundation has a similar ending soon page.
They do.
It's been very long since I've been on Foundation.
I just hear a lot of artists that feel like their stuff ends up getting lost when it gets on Foundation into the ether, unless those people specifically know to come for it. Not that can't happen on the other platforms, but it just feels a little more hidden. For some reason, feels a little more hidden on Foundation.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely the case as a platform gets bigger, the more its user base is going to be uploading stuff. Super Rare has the advantage of it being like an entirely closed ecosystem that they only onboard people at the pace that they want to, whereas like I think Foundation still works off of the like if you sell something you get an invite and then you can bring more people onto the platform model. I believe that's how it still functions, but even that it's not in control of Foundation themselves in terms of how fast the user base expands, and thus as we saw in the February, March sort of gold rush, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of artists flood into it every week, and they're all clamoring for the same attention on this same very small front page, which can only fit so much. And that's no different on OpenSea. The advantage to OpenSea, I think, is it feels a little bit more like it's a marketplace. And so when you have many pieces, edition pieces and whatnot, all together into one page where people can sort of like track the floor price and like see like the buying history. Is there like a lot of activity on these items or those items or whatever? That is the advantage to OpenSea because it's sort of designed more around volume, which I'm not there yet, but I'm planning on getting to that stage soon. And so that's why I think OpenSea and Super Rare are going to be my focus. Super Rare, obviously, for one of ones. It's a sought-after platform that I had, a really big, successful debut on.
And it took you a while to get in there.
It did, in the sense that like I waited forever to apply because I'd heard horror stories of people like
waiting.
I applied, in January, and then they emailed me back in September, or like I've applied 5 times and I've never heard back at anything. So I was discouraged from ever even applying, and then I applied on October, I think it was October 14th, and then I had heard back on the 27th. So it was like just under 2 weeks.
That's good.
That felt like a really, really fast turnaround from what I've heard historically is the case for everybody else. But I feel
like you had already made your name in the space a little bit, I
mean, maybe not necessarily in crypto itself, but like I applied to Super Rare and I felt like I had an extremely strong body of work that I submitted. Because like when you apply to Super Rare, you make like a little selfie video, like introducing yourself and talking about whatever. And like even in that video, I framed myself like off to the side so that I could like superimpose like some of my renders or whatever, and like I layered that together in After Effects. And then in addition to that, you have to upload like a Google Drive link with some unreleased or unminted work. And I've got probably 6 things that I could throw up that I feel are all very strong, and I decided to go with that big spaceship that I had made. And with that application, I also tweeted the same, like 10 minutes later or whatever. I was like, I'd have to go look back at how I phrased the tweet, but it was like, hey, Super Rare, like, let's get this party started. And like, I think this will do really well on the platform. So like, get back to me or whatever, just cheeky, just, you have to bang on people's doors, and you have to drum up the attention for yourself in this
schmoozy Billy.
Yeah,
exactly.
You got to catch the social media person at the right day, at the right time, when they just happen to see it. You never know.
And thankfully, like, I feel like over years and years, I've positioned myself well within the artist community, being a well-respected and like helpful, thoughtful, sort of friendly figure. And all the homies came out and retweeted and sort of shared along, and even tagged their people at Super Rare when they shared my submission. So it's not that I know exactly what caused me to be accepted, because they don't
sure
disclose
what the magic was, but
they don't disclose that. They don't say like, oh, like your thing got 5,000 views or like whatever, there's none of that. It's just like, hey, welcome, like here's a bunch of onboarding stuff, like good job. And so as far as actionable advice, if you're looking to get onto Super Rare, I unfortunately can't really provide any, because I applied one time. I feel like I got lucky, but I also had a very strong body of work and years of networking behind me that like you can't really shortcut a lot of that unless you have like 1 million plus or like some crazy super high follow count. Or like a PR firm or like a rep or something. Like, I don't know.
And like Pedro says in the chat here, a lot of really great artists have great minted work, and they just aren't that well known, so they don't sell. And that's a reason that I think doing the gamification thing kind of helps. It really helps you stand out. You kind of got to have a hook, because we're just basically approaching the same territory as Instagram was a couple of years ago, where it's just all these artists flooding in everything, and it's like, how do you even distinguish yourself? You know, you've got to do certain things to let yourself be known, or do stuff on social, or gamify it, or whatever. And Rad Science has said something about the OpenSea servers. I guess it crashes a lot. I haven't really noticed.
Oh, yes.
all the time.
OpenSea goes down continuously because it is the de facto platform for all of these like 10K profile pic things. And so like there's so many of those nowadays that there are some days where like 3 or 4 of them will all release on like the same afternoon, and it's just like way too much web traffic, you know, like basically any large project with with, you know, a couple 10,000 people or whatever, fans all trying to pile in, like the site just collapses. So it's a bit of a joke considering how much sales traffic goes through that site. Even though they take the smallest cut at 2.5%, they absolutely should, in theory, have the resources to be able to accommodate that. Again, I know software development, web development's not, you can't just like snap your fingers and throw money at it.
It's new territory.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But that being said, OpenSea was built years ago during like the sort of slump, you know, like the previous crypto like down cycle. And so they absolutely have had time on their side. It's just, there's just so much activity nowadays that I don't think really any website, well, I shouldn't say any website, because like Nifty just handled the POC drop extremely well.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about, you know, in a second.
Matt, let's do the rest of the week drops real quick, and then we'll come back around.
Next up is Maker's Place. Tonight, there's an artist by the name of Rick Ignition. Is doing a drop called Aurora EX, which I really like this. It's like this the pixel art type stuff. Yeah, super cool stuff. Really like it. You know. And then tomorrow, Rarzo. I'm probably messing that up, and I'm sorry. Evolution GAN is the name of the piece.
Ooh,
really cool stuff.
Yeah, with my head.
I know, right?
It's
super cool, like really trippy. You know, really fun stuff. So cool art, very cool art. I really like it.
It's
almost like the Google.
Deep Dream.
It's
Deep
like
Dream,
kind of like Deep Dream, but it's also kind of like oh gosh, you know, like when people play with like messed up iframes and stuff to do that kind of glitchy effect, where
it's cool, super cool stuff.
Yeah, very Brandon Parvini,
right?
In that technical aspect, I guess. But this is really cool.
Yeah, super cool. Then on the 8th, Original Plan. I guess Original Plan is one of the early people into the NFT space, and is a physical artist as well as digital. So they're doing a drop on Maker's Place on the 8th, which is cool. Good stuff. Cool. And then on the 10th, Marat Singiner, I always mess this name up. Yeah, I'm always is doing a drop on the 10th called Refractions. Really neat stuff, super glitchy, and, you know, fun mixture of I guess like realistic stuff, weird ethereal,
like the CG people doing things.
It's interesting,
like the guy with the VR helmet.
So that's it for Maker's Place. Next up on the community drops, Gustav is we mentioned him last week, but his drop drops this week. Starts in 22 hours. So just a reminder that one is going. It's cool, really pretty stuff. I love Gustav's stuff. I think it's great. And then next up we've got Adam Tubak. Says an email says, "Hey guys, I'm not sure if I understood correct." Oh yeah, because last week I said if you want us to shill it on the show.
That's right.
And then I think his subject line was "shill my work" or something.
Yeah, he's like, that's not the best line.
So
but...
gross of a way to ask or something like that. It was pretty funny. Hey guys, I'm not sure I understood correctly, but during your last stream, you mentioned that we could send you an email with our NFT drops. Yes, totally do that. info@mograph.com. When they have dropped a while ago now, but I'm really bad at the Twitter game and mingling with collectors. So hanging out in the Get Nifty group or with Dizzy Viper is more of my shtick, so I haven't sold that far. But yeah, here's Adam's work. It's on Foundation. Really good stuff. Super cool stuff. Yeah, I really like it.
I like this.
You know what?
first
I
one
think
here.
I've seen some of these before. Like the one of the guy sitting on the curb. I'm pretty sure I saw that on the Get Nifty
Oh, the Facebook page or
Discord.
something, or Discord.
Yeah, the Discord. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool stuff. Really pretty. So yeah,
Yeah.
go buy Adam's stuff. There you go.
Yeah.
That's it for the
that's it.
drops. If you've got a drop that you want us to shill on the show, hit us up in info@mograph.com and we'll shill it on the show. Is there another word for shilling? I don't know,
Promote.
that's not. Oh, promote. Yeah, promote it on the show. There we go. Much better.
Yeah, but I like shilling.
I don't like shilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're blatantly shilling your stuff. We don't care. Send it over.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of words that are like that. Like
Yeah.
even when I was advertising my super rare, I use the word debut and not Genesis, even though I
Right.
understand like Genesis is a word, it relates to crypto. Like,
Right.
for example, the very first block on the Bitcoin blockchain is called the Genesis block, which is like literally the very first Bitcoins. I understand the historical context and application of the word in now bringing it over to the art side. I just still don't like it. So I just
Yeah.
use the word debut.
Yeah.
Genesis does. No? No?
Sega,
The
the
80s kids.
Oh.
Genesis
I don't remember
does.
that.
What Nintendo don't.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I'm too young to have experienced those, but I know it from like random YouTube, like historical game stuff.
Now I feel old.
How old are you, Billy?
I'm 30.
Oh, you're only 30? I thought you were a little bit
Did
older
not
than
know
that.
that.
Nope,
I
I
didn't.
turned
Wow.
30 this
Thought you
past
were our
summer.
age.
You're a
Well.
baby. I turned 39 on Friday.
Yeah.
Well, hell yeah! I
It's-
hope that that went well. You were out traveling, right?
Yeah,
Out west?
I was at I spent my day at Disney at Disneyland. So it was
don't
the
think-
best birthday I've ever had in my life.
Right. I was
which
just about to say
which
I
was
don't think
good.
you can't
get
ask
the-
for a whole lot more.
Did
Yeah.
you get the pin or whatever? Did you wear the pin at Disney when
No,
it's your birthday?
Amy
that?
wanted me to get the it's my birthday. The thing is, I just hate lines. I hate them so much. You know,
I did it.
and there was a line just for, talking to the people so you could get a pin, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I would much rather, spend my time waiting in a line for a ride than waiting in a line for a pin.
Yeah,
you
but it's
know?
cool because like they'll just come up and be like, "Hey, you want a free ice cream? Because it's your birthday."
Yeah.
Like they'll do
Yeah.
stuff like that.
It's all right. I don't really care about that anymore. You know?
If you have the pin, do you get harassed by like the cast members or whatever?
Well, they'll tell
a
you
good
happy
way.
birthday. Yeah.
Okay. I just,
It's cool.
anytime I think of a public birthday, I think of like the Applebee's where they like dance
No,
and they bring out like a cake or whatever.
Yeah.
My brain defaults to any sort of public event birthday. That's the treatment.
Right.
Yeah.
No, they'll just be like walking by, some cast member will be like,
Oh,
"Oh, happy
happy birthday."
or
Yeah.
"Here, have an ice cream." Like it's really, it's
Yeah,
just cool
when
like that.
we went to Disney World on our honeymoon, me and my wife, and we were wearing the just married ones, and we were ordering ice cream, or we were ordering a water, and at an ice cream thing, and they're like, "Oh, what kind of flavor do you want? Here, congratulations on getting married and stuff." Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's how things
So
go.
let's talk about some security real quick, and then we'll get into and unless you want to go in a different order, Billy, it's up to you. It's your show.
I've got that's my show. I appreciate that. I came prepared with a very long notepad list, and on that is
I knew we wouldn't have to prepare for this show. I was
Right.
I was just gonna sit back and let you run the whole thing.
So
Yeah.
if we want to talk about security, I can jump to my
No, let's
NFT
just go in order.
influencers.
Let's
Okay,
just
cool.
go in order. Yeah, it's your show.
Gotcha. I will touch on security, and I've got an actionable Twitter thread for people if they want to learn more, like to get advice that they can come back to.
Okay.
All right, so I guess the first thing on my list is my items, of course. So if you weren't, or if you're kind of not a close follower of me specifically, if you pop over to my super rare page, Dave, if we want to just real quickly show, hopefully the links are accessible for you.
Yeah. Here you go. I got you. I should
So
reset the size. It's 500x. Let me just tone that down before I bring it in. Here we go.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see on super rare that widescreen work shows up very small anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, which is a little lame, but yeah. So this was my debut on super rare about a month ago. I think you can full screen the video. I think if you hover over it.
Okay, good. Here. Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So we got this nice big old spaceship. It's kind of doing its thing. This is a series that I would like to explore more different spaceships and different locations in the future as I like develop and get more time, to work on these. I like to think of this as like some sort of industrial kind of like a city, like a working class. Like it's a spaceship that's so big that people like live on it, and industry and commerce all take place in this big spaceship that's in orbit. And I just sort of made it that you watch it on repeat, and each time you can sort of follow a different spaceship.
Right, like this little freight one down here.
Yeah, like with the little shipping crates that sort of give you an idea of like what the scope and what the size of this ship is, or this station is. And additionally, if you're a viewer and you get a chance to listen to it with audio, there's a really beautiful, simple but really beautiful piano track that my partner's brother, he had composed this and let me use it, and could not have fit the vibe better. At least for me, it's like sort of 2001 Space Odyssey-esque, where it's like a really simple, only a handful of piano notes can go a really long way with spaceships. That's one simple trick for you. But that went off a way bigger success than I would have ever anticipated. I listed it as a reserve of 2.5, and I thought in my head, like, it'd be cool to get like 4, like, anything 5 or anything above 5. Like, I'm not going to get greedy in, like, of course, like, we all want to sell our first piece for like 420 ETH, because of course not, right? But like, that's not realistic. Right, that's not realistic. So I thought, anything above 5 is going to be a way above expectation, and it wound up, it was like around 3 point something as the timer was about to wind down. And Super Rare is one of the platforms that in the final 15 minutes bids extend the auction, and that happened a routine
quite a few times.
Right? And
it was fun to watch. We were watching it live.
We were on Discord.
Yeah, we were hanging out, and I had Erica over on the the couch next to me, and any one of us would refresh the page and see that there was a bid first, and it was like this really exciting flurry for like about an hour as the extension kept going. So that was way bigger than I really would have ever expected, and that one event happening seems to, at least on paper, have totally redirected my my path for the next year, because through that came a good amount of attention and a handful of other little discords that I'm in pertaining to NFT and like crypto stuff. And I was approached by some people and sort of proposed with some really cool opportunities, 2 of which I can't exactly fully really say, but like one of them is a drop that is on a website that's not OpenSea or Super Rare. It's really all I can say currently, and that'll be maybe early January. We'll see. And then alongside of that, or sort of maybe unrelated but still stemming from this successful sale of Cygnus, the spaceship piece, there's a opportunity to be a part of a gallery, which like a real life thing. Obviously involving like NFT and crypto art, but like it'll be a physical like IRL thing, which I think a lot of us even before NFTs, we thought like, oh, it'd be cool to do like a digital art show or whatever.
Yeah.
At least, that's something that I've kicked around in my head and have no way of sort of handling the logistics or like even really knowing how to arrange any of that or who to get in contact with. It's just one of those like small little things that like, oh, that'd be cool to be involved in or do someday. And, potentially being able to check that off like a little artistic bucket list is a really exciting proposition, which, both of those stem directly from the attention that this sale has, gotten me.
Yeah.
Quick,
Have you talked to any of the people? Like, were you in conversation with any of the people who were bidding on your piece?
Not
Like, I'm curious why, like, what it was. I mean, other than that, it's a fantastic piece,
Yeah.
Like,
So
what was the bidding war?
Yeah, and were they like already a follower?
Yeah.
Did they just all of that.
yeah, so the winning bidder, 0x22, is a somewhat notable collector or quite notable collector on Super Rare. I gone through their profile and checked out some of the other stuff that they had acquired before even I'd ever even listed anything there. I somehow had come across their page just searching through other artists who had sold stuff. So I was a little aware of that person and haven't had a direct conversation with them, but have had ongoing conversation while the bidding was happening with another one of the people who was in the running, Patty Stash. His other internet name is Not Today, No.
Okay.
So he was one of the other people who had bid, and I'd been aware of him from over the summer on Maker's Place. He's one of the big collectors on that platform, and I think he's got some of like Aryev's stuff, and maybe he's from like Ryan Talbot, possibly. But in any case, I'd come across them as well and struck up a conversation with them while the bidding, either while the bidding was happening or just after it had closed. And yeah, I think there was one other person, but I don't remember if they had like a Twitter actively while the bidding was happening. But yeah, in addition to those or to that activity on Super Rare, the other stuff that I've sold on OpenSea, which that should be the second link. So this is my sort of ongoing sort of cyberpunk city stuff. So the first one stemmed from it was like a remix, an animated version of one of my Lights Camera Render
Yeah.
projects, from the start of the year. And so my very, very first sale was a gallery that we did in the Get Nifty Discord.
Right.
The Distorted Reality, which was a thing that was minted through the Sevens Foundation. I got a bid on that like one week sort of earlier, like mid-October, I think. As a bunch of other people did on the Facebook page. There's some sort of like Twitter website or I don't know, group or somebody who put bids on like maybe 5 or 10 people's things, and that sort of kicked off some conversations that I had in a Discord server where not this piece that we're watching here, but the piece that had sold, I think the bid was 0.33, which I thought was, it's on the low end. That was like, I think maybe $1,300 at the time based on what ETH was. And, I was like, man, I feel like this is low for an animated piece. What should I do? And some people, actually a couple people reached out to me from that server and were like, hey, this is a cool piece. Like I could, bump up the bid and kind of get you kickstarted. And I thought that was like just super awesome. And from that I put together a page on my website of just like unreleased stuff that I hadn't done anything with. And one of the collectors was like, hey, like I really like that render from LCR that we just had, looping on the screen. So we
by the way, I just wanted to mention, and Joe was mentioning this in the chat too, the shout out to the drop right here in the corner.
Yeah.
So we're sort of time is a flat circle. Right now we're on the drop and we're featuring this little Easter egg. So I'm
meta.
just I'm just trying to build like a little world with these renders. And if you want to pull up the second one,
Yeah.
So far they've just been like a character and some sort of like, you know, city sort of backdrop. Just kind of going off of what is a realistic amount of stuff to get done in like a week, like a couple days, you know, kind of put together some kit bash stuff, you know, make some small little animations like the lights and like the little billboards in the background, a little bit of Mixamo, you know. I think that's a very realistic thing to get done in a couple days time, you know, say like a week and a half with render and comp. And so, yeah, those two are up on the OpenSea, and, you know, thankfully, you know, saw some success.
Yeah,
I'm looking at some of these. I'm sorry. I'm trying to see what other Easter eggs you have in here. Is this your alien in the back there?
So so those are the visitors.
Visitor, yeah.
Yep. I don't own any of those, but I asked in the Slack. I was like, hey, anybody who's got visitors, like, you know, post them up. You know, obviously, certain NFTs you get the ability to like use commercially or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Which will tie into another topic later on in my little notes thing. So visitors is one of those, like, as are the Bored Apes. And my ape is on the left hand side underneath the neon sign that says exchange. It's like graffitied onto the wall.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
wow, that's an Easter egg.
There's a lot of stuff in there, and like the green neon sign that's in like the middle third. It's sort of like up above. It's in between the two cars. That number 9438. That's the number of my ape. So that's like another thing that's kind of a reoccurring theme.
Is this car? Is this your? Don't you have, not specifically this car? Don't you have this model car? Don't you own this?
The previous one, the previous one was a one that I had made. That car right there is just like a CG trader, you know, just like an asset kind of whatever. Which, you know, it's a mix of making stuff, you know, on your own and sourcing assets. And even within just sourcing assets, I think there's an art to making everything mesh together. You know, tweaking materials, and obviously like the composition of, you know, the shot or whatever goes a long way to allowing these things to sort of take on the right amount of attention, you know, or not. So those are the first two pieces. Those were both one of ones.
Why, if I can ask, why did you decide to mint those on OpenSea versus going through Super Rare once you were finally on there?
Gotcha. Yeah. So, like I was saying, with the advantage of OpenSea being a really good collection page for doing high volume amount of like a large edition size of minting, that's where I would like to get to over the next year. And so I wanted to make the collections page, which, Dave, if you can pull that back up, just the OpenSea collection /GERNGE, you can see, like, if you can envision this a couple months into the future where I've done a handful of edition pieces. I think if you scroll up, there'll be stats at the top of the page. Yeah, so there's like volume traded. There's a floor price for, like, in the future when things are listed and resold. You can track. It becomes a little bit more like an economic marketplace, an OpenSea collection. And so to answer you very directly, that's why those two have been minted there, because as I plan on doing a couple pieces a month, you know, fingers crossed, that's an ambitious, you know, that's an ambitious timeline, but fingers crossed, I would like to do my next piece, which, Dave, if you can pull up, it's the Dropbox link that I sent on the the Skype. Gotcha. It said like next mint. This will be hopefully in a week or two, once I get some stuff settled with Manifold, which is a custom smart contract website. This I would like to do as an edition of 10. Each one will be cheaper, but in sum, it will net more ETH than just listing as a one of one.
Right.
And then, you know, hopefully, of course, it affords people who want to get in and start to flip stuff and sort of build traction on secondary, you know, secondary resales, which, again, on OpenSea, you can specify what royalty % you get. I'm looking at this in the very long term, trying to make it a big picture, like over the next year, trying to build a lot. So, there is a good amount of thought and consideration that goes into what to mint, where to mint it, how much to mint, what price, etc.
Right.
Which
Right.
I'm not going to profess myself to be an expert at any of that at this point, but I can see the pros and cons of the different marketplaces. And I think based on my goals with the edition pieces, an OpenSea collection gets you a lot of benefit versus only just doing one of ones, which,
Right.
yes, those two, which were minted as one of ones, those could have very well sold on like a foundation or a super rare or whatever. But those being the start, which kind of kick off the series, even though they might not be, a year from now, they might not be the visually the coolest pieces, because I'm going to want to continue to push it further and further and make the artwork better and more interesting each time. They will sort of serve as like a halo of like, this is where things began, and hopefully, obviously fingers crossed, hopefully for the two people who have collected each of those one of ones, that will pay off, them having gotten a pretty sweet deal on what could potentially be a cheap one of one, a year from now or 2 years from now.
Sure.
That's obviously, we want
2 years from now is 10 years in NFT times.
Right. I mean, who knows? And the crypto market could fall out from underneath us. Who knows? And so really, you just have to act on what is the data right now, sort of what direction does that point us in, and knowing that nothing's set in stone, of course, and just trying to plan for the future, plan for. I think the goal for many people should be to be bumping up like secondary activity, because with that comes the art getting into more people's hands, and with that comes a larger following, which it's sort of like a self-fulfilling cycle. It's like more people who come across your work, who have bought and sold and traded, means more people talking about it, which means more attention, which drives the price on everything up. So it's like, in big picture terms, it's like there's a lot more than just like, I'm going to sit down and hammer something out in cinema and just list it, throw it up on foundation for 1 ETH, and like, pay my $150 to mint it or whatever, and then just move on to the next thing. There's like, if you want to put the attention into sort of, I guess, kind of making a business plan, an NFT business plan, there's a lot of room there to find success.
Yeah, we had bots on this. It's funny because like they bought a link and then it goes up in the stream and you can't actually click on it, so it's completely pointless.
Yeah, joke's on them.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm looking through here. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. Why did you choose 9x16 for that piece?
Oh, the preview one, the next one. Yeah, I'm just trying to mix it up. I've seen other people post like a variety. A reference. I'll always refer to Ness. Often, just because he's a really successful artist and has pushed things in a very similar fashion. To me, like Cyberpunk, C4D, Octane, Redshift, kind of whatever. Like they're similar, but of course different enough. I think we each have a different artistic voice, but there's so much to gain from studying him. He doesn't work in just one format, one ratio, and I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. I've never personally ever done anything in 9x16 up until this point. Like I'd never just like thought like, that's going to be a good idea, because it's a pain. Like I have one of my monitors like stacked vertically now so that I can like actually see my dang render view like in full full size. And I know a lot of us groan when a client request comes in like, hey, can we format this for 9x16? And it's like, it means they got to squash a bunch of stuff into the middle so that I'll be able to crop it and do this, that, and the other.
And then they come back and say, oh, we also need 4x5, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, so just sort of starting each piece with a ratio in mind, based on like Pinterest references, and like putting together a little mood board on like Pure Ref or whatever. I kind of get a vibe for like what I think the composition's going to be, or what like just sort of writing out like a 1-sentence idea in my head. Like the one that we've just previewed, I think of this lady who I haven't named the character yet, but like she's some sort of like hacker type character, and like she's working with a friend or some like an associate or whatever, and that person like disappeared, and that's why she's pacing around the room like on like a little phone, like figuring out like, you know, I'll write and develop the idea more, but it's like, was something supposed to happen and it didn't? Did somebody disappear? Like, you know, like just sort of piecing together this story. And
Yeah.
it can seem silly to do that for like a daily render, but like I'm spending like a week or so on these, and you know, writing the description is an important part of an NFT because it's the text that gets attached to it, and it gets, you know, gets associated with that token. And so for me, if I can imagine what a year into the future looks like, having done, you know, a dozen of these or a couple dozen of them, whatever, there's different characters, there's storylines that have crossed and like connected and, you know, diverged apart from one another. You know, as I introduce more characters might meet and like have a, you know, there might be a piece, you know, the ninth piece might be, it might feature the characters from piece number 3 and piece number 5 or whatever, you know, like just again, trying to set a little bit of a business plan with a little bit of a story flow. It's not super rigid, you know, I'm developing it as I go. I'm, you know,
kind of like what Ryan Talbot's doing with his characters. They're always, those little robots are on a journey, and these are their adventures and the places that they visit. Yeah.
So Ryan's another good, you know, point of reference where he's got, you know, Lily, the little robot, and there's like Tank and there's Tread, and they, you know, they meet up and they've got these little antics and little, you know, scenes where they come together. And
the balloon scene. Oh man, that's literally hanging up in our bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, he's making beautiful work, and you know, between his color palette and the little robot characters, you can begin to recognize Ryan, which I have felt, being a commercial Mograph artist, freelancing, I don't really have a visual style because my style is gonna. Yeah. I'm rendering whatever, like Google or Microsoft or whoever, whatever the client wants. You know, that's. Yeah, in a small way, me as an artist is speaking through some of that decision-making process as I'm making the art, but it doesn't come through in the art itself. If ever. And so, having the ability to explore that, I think is cool. You know, I played D&D and like other tabletop RPG games, and so it's like the idea of like having to make a character on the spot and like populate some sort of backstory, what they do, who they associate with, whatever, is a creative muscle that I have a little bit of experience, you know, like having done. And so being able to apply that to the art, obviously in like cyberpunk sort of themed stuff is, of course, you know, a lot of people do it, but I'm trying to put my own little spin on it and sort of build a narrative, build this little world with, you know, Cybran City, which is where all of these pieces take place. And, you know, eventually I'll have enough of them built up where I'll probably draw like a little map just to try to give myself like a reference point of like where things are located in the city and like how things connect. Just trying to think forward, because, you know, it's always annoying where people, you know, you get a comment where it's like, for example, like Tom Coben, he did like that bowling alley machine, and people were like, there's no power cord to power the robot. You know, like there's going to be some version of that that's going to bother me. Like, you know, 6 months from now, like so-and-so is going to be like, I thought this building was in so-and-so.
Comic book guy comes along. He's like, excuse me.
Yeah. And so I want to.
Anytime that happens, a wizard did it.
I want to try to jump a step ahead of that. So I made like a little artboard on Miro, which is like a really cool online artboard storyboarding, or not storyboarding, mood board thing, where I got like links. Yeah, I've got links and like little, you know, text blurbs sort of written out, just jotting down like as a virtual notepad with like links and reference inspiration imagery. That way, as I build out, you know, as a larger project, trying to just kind of keep track on things. And who knows, you know, none of us can say if it is or isn't realistic, but like a few years from now, it might be IP that I'm able to leverage, you know, like. That's something that Ryan Summers talked about the first Camp Mograph. You know, we my collective friends and I in Detroit, you know, we go under the name Box Fort. We did the opening title sequence to Half Res motion graphics event in Chicago. And, you know, Ryan's point was like, we created a bunch of little characters for that spot, and we continue to do so with our own like collaborative sort of short form animation. And that is IP that you are able to leverage as an artist when you make your own, you create your own unique stuff. You can try to not just, you know, profit. I mean, profit in the philosophical sense, not just directly like, you know, selling it, but you're able to profit or leverage that creation in more than just like whatever its original distribution medium was for. Like if you made it as a video to post to Instagram, there might be, you know, who knows, EJ might get into like making toy figurines, you know, for his little, you know, his little characters on Super Rare someday.
Yeah,
like
he has been doing that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so-
Scott made him one, right? He 3D printed it or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So I think whether you're into NFTs themselves or not, this sort of change in thinking of what does me being able to make my own art and sell it as itself, what other doors can that open for me? You know, which is not something that we're trained to think about when you just like work at a day rate freelancing for like a studio, or, you know, you do direct to client work, or if you're a staff employee and you're just, you know, showing up and, you know, doing your thing, working for the man every day. This is not anything that we get taught.
Right.
And for me, I didn't learn any of that in school. You know, my college education for Mograph was like, all right, this is like the bevel tool in Maya or whatever. It was like, it was very just like instructional, like this is the software. There was no art theory. There was no like artistic business, no marketing 101. Like there was none of that. It was just like, here's the software, use it. Like good luck.
It's almost along the same lines of what happens when you go to high school and everybody tells you got to learn algebra, but they don't teach you how to do taxes.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I would much rather learn how to make a Excel spreadsheet which has a couple sum functions built into it so that I can like make some categories and like columns and like add stuff together, or like format something like that, than learning the freaking quadratic equation or whatever, you know?
Yeah, there's a whole nother art to it, and I'm guessing that that's going to be something that comes to schools. I mean, even when I was in school, it wasn't motion graphics. It was like, here's 3D animation.
I'll be right back, guys. Sorry.
It's his usual break.
I thought I was going to be able to make it the whole show, and I'm sorry. No, I'll be right back.
The Imodium didn't work. When I was in school anyway, there wasn't motion graphics. The term had not been coined. The coin had not, So the only class I really took on anything like that was like 3D Max, and I already knew how to use 3D Max, so it was kind of pointless. They're like, here, just come back at the end of the semester with a project done.
Right, and turn it in, and then you're done. Right.
And I did that or whatever, but there was nothing about motion graphics or doing text and how to format it correctly and the color theory that goes along with it, any of that stuff. And I'm hoping that this is something that kind of works its way into universities or classes online or whatever it is, right? Where you can actually like learn how you should deal with the business of being an artist. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think if you get a job coming out of school, you know, like a full-time position at a studio or whatever, which is still what I recommend personally, like, because you learn how to like work alongside producers, and like if there's like a creative director or something there, you start to get a sense for like what like the hierarchy within the like Mograph is, which it can be annoying, and you know, a lot of us will complain about like the hovering art director or whatever, but like just understanding the structure of the industry is not something that you can learn just like on your own from like a YouTube tutorial or like your GSG or whatever, and then like you just jump into the freelance world. Personally, I still feel like having some sort of full-time position, even if it's a junior or like, you know, internship, whatever, I think that's all really valuable. So that's like kind of your first step. And then if you want to jump to freelance, you have to like, you get thrown into the deep end and you're forced to learn like all this business stuff, like doing my own accounting, or not filing my taxes, but just like doing a budget, figuring out like how much money do I have to make per month to cover my whatever, what my rate is, etc. So like you start to learn that sort of business stuff out of necessity, jumping freelance. But now I think this jump to NFT ship, whatever, is almost like it's another step forward in terms of like becoming a proper entrepreneur, where you have to be your own marketing department, you have to be your own manager, like responding to inquiries or like figuring out like what your next project's going to be, what's the roadmap, like roadmap's a real fun term within NFT projects and stuff. And so, yeah, like it's basically a business plan. If you wanted to open a restaurant, whatever, like you'd have to write out a business plan which spans the first couple years. Like where am I going to get property? Who am I going to hire? Who's going to be able to do the things that I can't do? Like those are things that go into a real business plan, and there very much are real equivalents to those same ideas. Trying to really in earnest take NFT art successfully or seriously in finding success. Like I've had a couple of people joke and say like, oh, so like, you don't work anymore or whatever. And it's like, I honestly work now more than I ever did on most projects. And, aside from like crunch week, when you're like about to deliver like a really huge job and like, you're literally not sleeping, like, cause those unfortunately happen. But like, I'm just like I'm like a half step under that, where like, I'm only sleeping like a couple hours, a night right now, where I'm in this like go phase, like trying to build up momentum, because it's almost like restarting. Like I just freelanced for 4 years, and initially it's like this sort of panic, this surge of like, okay, like I have to find out how to be successful. How do I get clients? Who's gonna reach out to me to get jobs and whatever? And
you got to be selling yourself and
right. So taking a step out of that to now focus on NFTs, it's like I'm back at like level 1 or like level 0.5 or whatever, where I gotta step back up the ladder to get back to that like comfortable, like I don't want to say like you're relaxed, because I don't think any of us are ever really relaxed, but like
True.
There's a bit of a grind, and there's some time that if you put in, I genuinely do think that you'll get a successful return on. Just really trying to make content as much as you can that represents you is the most important thing. And that can, believe me, I don't fully even know what that means. I'm just making stuff, and a handful of people have vibed with it and have decided to purchase it. And I don't think there's inherently anything that I've done. I wasn't born with some special, ability to dunk a basketball at like an NBA regulation height rim. There's not like a physical, there's nothing that like you can't be born with. I genuinely think in art and what we do, it's a matter of like creative problem solving, which anyone can learn.
Yeah.
And study and like be inspired by reference. I watch Blade Runner and Star Wars and 2001: A Space Odyssey like the same as everybody else. Like, so I personally don't think that there's like some intrinsic thing you have to be born with, some great business acumen, or like
just have to practice.
Exactly. It's a matter of time, and thankfully, I've been noodling around in cinema for a decade now, and I've put my time in Slack and Discord and Twitter and whatnot.
You are very active in all the Slacks and all the Discords.
All of them. Yeah.
Everyone knows who you are. So that's why to me it's not surprising that I was actually surprised that it took you this long to really get into the NFT scene, to like switch over to this is my full-time job or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I felt like you would have been right there on the cusp of it once, because you're good at it and you're active and everyone knows you. I was surprised it took that long. Like same with Ariev. Like Ariev was very hesitant to even get into it in the first place, and I'm like, dude, why aren't you doing this? You'll be incredibly successful. And he was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
You know.
yeah, because he was finishing his course, and we were all playing Halo,
Mhm.
talking about NFTs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get around to it, and then like all of a sudden, as soon
Then
as
he
he
sold
did
his first one, and it's like, okay, that's all I'm doing now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
see, I told you, told
And,
you.
and
Yeah.
at least from in my perspective, although the super rare sale wasn't the first, like it wasn't the literal
Right.
first thing I sold,
Right.
it was very much like a defining step in this direction.
Mhm.
And you know, I've got like I alluded to earlier, you know, I've got some stuff planned for January and February going into next year, and in tandem with that, I've got some, you know, self-produced, self-initiated things that I want to,
Mhm.
you know, accomplish, and very quickly I can already see myself being busy out to like April or May, and that was absolutely not the case of how I sort of lived or like operated that sort of timeline when I
Mhm.
was full-time freelance. It was literally just like, all right, someone's going to email me, I'm going to say yes or I'm going to say no, and I'm going to work
Mhm.
on this. If I say yes, I'm going to work for 1 to 12 weeks or however long the freaking job
Yeah.
takes, and then it ends, and then you'd wait until somebody else emails you, and like
Yeah.
that's how I've lived my life the last 4 years. It's just like flying by the seat of my pants, waiting for something to come into my email box.
Mhm.
And this is a complete 180 on that, where it's self-initiated, self-motivated. You know, of course you're still setting your own, you know, uh, timeline, or like okay, I think this is going to take me this many days or whatever to make X, Y, or Z. You know,
Mhm.
functionally doing the stuff in cinema is not a whole lot different, but it's all the planning and like all the everything outside of just being in the software itself, you know,
Mhm.
is done a 180 in terms of like I got to think out more into the future now. There's this whole economic thing of like trying to over time continue to push sales higher and higher, and how
Mhm.
do you do that? Like, you know, additions, sort of gamifying things, making a Discord server for yourself, like all of that is like all new, and you know, kind of still figuring all that out, and it's exciting. You know, I don't want to say any part of this isn't exciting. um, to me it you know, there's the cheesy phrase, it's like, oh, you know, if you love what you do, it's not work or whatever, which
Yeah.
But it is
whatever.
work, but
Yeah,
you'll
of course.
just enjoy
It's just
the work.
enjoyable work.
Right,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and thankfully freelance was very much like that, and this is just one slight step above that in terms of like, well, now I just get to make whatever I want to make. I mean,
Mhm.
not literally, but like, you know, it's stuff that I would have liked to have made years ago, and I get to just make it now, you know,
Yeah.
which is super
Yeah.
exciting. And that part doesn't feel like work, but all of the other like learning about freaking stuff, and like trying to schedule a meeting with like people from Manifold so that I can get set up with my own smart contract, and like
Mhm.
learning like what the hell even is a smart contract, what does this afford me the ability to do versus just minting directly on a site, like
Yeah.
that's,
Can you
you know.
talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah,
Like,
so like
what are you planning on doing? What is like if yeah, talk to me why you would even want to do that in the first place.
gotcha, yeah, so like in the most immediate near term, uh if you want to mint multiple editions on an OpenSea collection,
Mhm.
you have to do it through like basically sidestepping the website. You basically change the URL that you mint through, and you change like a text string, which then allows you to mint editions, because by default you just mint like it's a one of one only.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, I could in theory mint a piece and just in the name, literally in the name, put like 1/10, like number one
Gotcha.
out of
Right.
10, and then mint the exact same thing, do number 2 out of 10,
Mhm.
do the next thing, number
Then
3
you
out of
accidentally
10.
mess up and you got to burn it and it's gonna cost you money.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like you
Right.
you absolutely could do that. Right. I could do that right now on OpenSea, whereas right now I'm sort of tied up trying to get onboarded onto Manifold. Um, Once you're on that platform, you know, it runs through a website. When you mint stuff, you have like a login, which, you know, runs through your MetaMask wallet or whatever. And, you know, you sign in and you have your creator contract, which this is not something that directly shows up on OpenSea or on Rarible or whatever. But like if you click through to Etherscan, this is something, if you're interested in NFTs, I recommend, you'll see like a little box with like an arrow on like an OpenSea page or like on a foundation or whatever, where or it'll be like a little text blurb that says like view TX, like view transaction. Honestly, I recommend people click on that button and start to look at this page where it says like what address this came from, who did it go to. Like when you sell something directly, it's going from your wallet, and then you can see the recipient's wallet. You can see that. You can also view stuff like how much gas was paid, what the unit price of Ethereum was at the time, which is also all very useful and necessary information if you plan on doing your taxes correctly.
Yeah.
It's a benefit to get familiar with this stuff now. When you do that, eventually you get to a point where you can see the contract that token was minted from. And if you're just on Foundation or you're on Super Rare or whatever, you'll see that you're just assuming you're doing everything as a normal artist, like you've never heard of the word manifold. You're minting through that website's creator contract, which, yes, your name gets added to the metadata of that because like you're the user that was interacting with the website when you minted that token. But potentially in the future, if that website goes down and things need to be merged, or like there's an OpenSea 2.0 or whatever to make up some story or whatever, a lot of that information can be lost or it can get fuzzy. It can be difficult to tie back, like if somebody did like a collaboration drop or like it was minted through some other thing. Like, for example, the very first thing I sold, which was part of that distorted reality exhibition, was minted by the Sevens Foundation. It wasn't minted by me. So while my name appears in the properties on OpenSea, it doesn't appear when you view my profile and you look at what I have minted, what my wallet has minted. That piece doesn't show up. So the discoverability of that piece is a little lower because it wasn't minted by me. Now, a flip side of that is if you mint stuff through your own creator contract, any website or any API which uses sort of what's becoming standard, like best practice, similar to like what OpenSea does, you'll be able to view that on Etherscan, and it will have my name attached to it directly. It'll be like $GERNGE, like it'll be like the GERNGE coin. That contract created this token, and if you look at this 10 years into the future or whatever, and we're all using some new platform because it's like it's better, right now let's think of the current marketplaces as like MySpace, and a few years from now there's going to be Facebook, and then a few years from that there's going to be like whatever comes next,
Let's
Instagram.
Just hope it isn't actually Facebook.
Right. All right. I'm just using those as placeholder, placeholder websites, like using our sort of our Web 2.0 familiarity.
They're trying, but let's hope it's not.
Right. As we push further into Web 3.0, this fun buzzword that we people like to use now, anything can happen, and having things minted through your own name, your own contract with your own like figure that can be found and searched for, should any of this ever go down or like have to get merged or ported to a new website. I think a lot of that will be more successful if you've minted stuff through your own contract.
Yeah.
And so what'll likely happen is when I do get set up, I'm going to work with the two collectors who own those two pieces that I've sold on OpenSea. I'll reclaim them back, refund them the money, the Ethereum that they paid me, and then burn those tokens and basically remint them with my own setup and like resell them back for the exact same price. Sure, I'll eat a little bit on gas fees, transferring stuff back and forth, but I think long term it'll be better to have as much of everything that I can control, everything that I mint is minted through my contract, that it will always in perpetuity have my name attached to it. And
that's cool.
Also, there's some nuance which I also haven't fully wrapped my head around, the difference between IPFS, which is like the global sort of decentralized web storage that a lot of these NFTs go through. There's debate or whatever between IPFS and Arweave. I've heard it pronounced Arweave and Arweave. I'm not sure the pronunciation, but those are kind of the two standards in terms of like this decentralized file storage. And I think Arweave has a little bit, from what I understand or am able to understand, has a little bit of a leg up on its potential longevity should things start to go wrong, theoretically in the future. Like as platforms start to shift, or as this magic storage pool that the internet has just made, I don't know, with IPFS, like should anything happen to that, or should it need to be transported or whatever, I've seen people say both ways, like, is this going to be a nightmare? Is it just going to work? Who knows? And I think there's something with how Arweave works that in theory should be better long term. So that's another advantage, that everything you mint through Manifold goes to Arweave instead of IPFS, which would be the default that something on like OpenSea could go to. And that's not even necessarily a default. If you just list something on OpenSea, by default the metadata does not get frozen, which means that like it remains editable. And because it's in that editable state, it never really gets sent to IPFS and like basically just like frozen. And like the file gets uploaded with the description and everything attached to it. It's sort of in this like limbo. And like one of my pieces on OpenSea has it and one doesn't. And so I'm like, shit, like in the future, like what happens to that one where I didn't know about this button ahead of time? Like, did I screw something up? I don't know. And so thankfully, if once I get set up on Manifold, I'll be able, now that I know things a little bit better than I did a month ago, I'll have a do-over, and like hopefully I'm set up a little bit better for the future.
That's cool. Do you think it would I'm curious about like the burning aspect of this, like would burning these coins and reminting them and stuff, does that devalue anything, or
I mean, in my mind, in my opinion, no, because I am in direct contact with the people who currently own the current token, and they're on board and they understand the benefit of me redoing things through Manifold. Because with some of the collectors that I've come to know, like in Discords and whatnot, it is a beneficial thing, and having your own stuff minted through your own contract is seen as like, okay, this person takes this stuff seriously. They've put in the legwork. It's not as simple as just yeah, okay, I bought a Bored Ape, like thing, like cool, I'm like invested in crypto or whatever, even though I'd bought Ethereum 5 years ago, whatever. But like, just owning like a JPEG doesn't mean that like you understand what's going on and like you have the foresight to like think of this stuff as like bigger picture, which some like the work and the effort that it goes through, like learning about how tokens actually work and interacting with stuff, like not in just like the out of the box, like easy mode, like, oh, you can just mint your first thing, which that's where all of us were like in February or March. Like, if you're listening to this as a fellow creator and you're like, what the heck is Manifold? Like, this is a whole new rabbit hole that I have to like go down. Yeah, I know, I understand. And like, it can feel frustrating if that's not something that you want to learn. But it is taken seriously. It's taken seriously by the handful of collectors who I've come to meet, and they recognize like, okay, this is an artist who's going to be putting in more work than just making the art and noodling around in Photoshop or Cinema or whatever. Like you're putting in the effort to learn like how blockchains and stuff work, and that's recognizable.
And it's something where like you may feel behind and you have to learn this and feel like, oh, well, I'm never going to catch up and learn all this stuff at all. But honestly, there's plenty of time, and by the time you get there, there's going to be other stuff to learn, and everybody else is going to be learning it too. So it's just a constant learning process if you want to really be in it, in the way you are,
Right. And
always, and ABC always be learning.
Exactly. And it's not like there's no do-overs, ask this question. It's a very legitimate question of like, is this bad for my outlook? And that's why I think in this case, no, because, I'm trying to do the right thing for the long-term benefit of my collectors by like setting everything up on this collections page, which will all be minted by me, like with this, collection, which will list out like the attributes and properties correctly. It'll list out like the floor price and like, be able to track this as a much bigger project than just being like one token that's like, sitting in somebody's, foundation or maker's place collection, like doing, God knows what, waiting for somebody to come by and try to rebuy it. Like, I don't know how much secondary sale, like selling there actually is for one of ones, because to my knowledge, it's like 99% of that is for edition pieces. It's very rare for one of ones to trade hands. And on this OpenSea collection, being able to mix one of ones alongside edition pieces, now that I know what I'm doing, and once I get set up on Manifold, and I'll be able to be able to in earnest mint edition pieces without just doing the hacky, like, all right, this is 1 of 10 and then remint the next one. Right. This is number 2 of 10. Yeah. Like, you can do that. It doesn't look great, because it's tough to tell that those 10 were actually like all related to one another.
Yeah.
Because like they are distinct tokens. You just named them like differently.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different than them actually in earnest being uploaded, as a set. And so trying to learn like what that actually all means and what that entails. Yeah, it's annoying for me and for the the two collectors to have to transfer these back and forth and go through the effort of reminting them. But I've got a spreadsheet now with like everything I post. I've got a link to my Dropbox for like the actual file, and then like also the tags and like a cell, to copy and paste the description. Like I've got all that in order, so like the actual process of remaking stuff won't be that big of a deal. And I'm doing it early enough to where there's only 2 things versus redoing this 6 months from now. And like, there could be 100, there could be 100 things. Yeah. Who knows?
What's the price of ETH at that time? How much gas is it going to cost you?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so, I think this is a better thing to just, get it over with early. And it'll benefit, I think there are many, many more benefits than negatives. Yeah, it's it's going to be annoying that if you dig really, really, really deep into the bowels of, IPFS, you might be able to find the old one once it's burnt. Who knows? But like going forward, it'll be much better to track that it all came through me and whatnot. So, yeah, cool. So that's my stuff. The next segment
on the Billy Show.
We can get through these a little bit quicker if we want. I don't know if you talked about Merge a whole lot last week when you did the drop. That was Pac's thing on Nifty.
Yeah, I know nothing about it. All right, what can you tell me about it?
Well, I think a good amount of us, whether you're a fan or not, I'm somewhere in the middle personally of Pac and what they represent. The art itself is not necessarily super crazy. These are like fairly diffuse white little spheres.
Sure.
But the idea is you buy one of these little mass tokens, and it's just like basically like it has like one, I don't know, just to use like video game terms, it's got like 1 HP, like 1 health point. If you buy 2, it's got 2 HP. And like over the more you buy, you would get a bonus. So for example, if you bought 10, you would get 1 extra. So you'd wind up with 11.
Bulk discount. And okay.
If you buy 100, like right there, that little formula, if you have 100 of them and then you buy another 20, it'll combine and it'll be 120. So like you're not going to have multiple mass tokens in your wallet. Should you buy multiple, you'll have one that represents the quantity of mass that you bought, which is very different than what an NFT, what we've thought of. And this is very on brand for Pac. Like with cubes, which was a big drop in like April, maybe. I think it was like there was 1 cube and then there was like 5 cubes and 10 cubes and whatever. Again, very simple artwork, just like kind of clay, diffuse white, whatever, very simple animation. But if you bought cubes, you could then send them to another website, burn.art, and it would destroy that token, and in return you would receive Ash, with like $ Ash, which is a new coin, which has its own like you can buy and sell and whatnot. And there are other utility sort of things, other drops that POC has done, where you can only buy it with Ash. And Mass or Merge, whatever you want to call it, this recent one is still unfolding because the tokens, they were on sale from, was it Thursday to Friday or like Wednesday to Friday, whatever, last week. They haven't been minted yet because like I think 260,000 of these tokens were minted. If you keep scrolling, you'll see. But basically, the gist of it was the more of these tokens that people buy,
Holy cow.
they will lump together. They'll lump together. Yeah, I know exactly. They'll lump together, and there's a leaderboard, and whoever is on top of the leaderboard with the most quantity of mass is considered the alpha. And what that really means or what that will do is still undetermined. You know, with POC, a lot of what you're getting is like, what is a token capable of doing? Like, what does it even mean? Like, what does an NFT even mean? Like, it's never the same, you know, pushing, you know, this is even way bigger brain stuff than whatever I was just talking about with like contracts.
It's like $150 million.
$153,199,550.
Wow.
Well, the price changed a little bit because if you every couple hours it got more expensive to buy them. So like initially they were 300, and so I want to say the final sales total I've seen like 92 million or like 101. Either way,
crazy.
it topped itself as the biggest NFT release. So now POC has 2 of the 3 biggest NFTs, I think, with Mass being 92 mil. I think Poets, which was a one that happened a couple months ago, where it was like you would buy a Poet, it wasn't revealed, and then they were all revealed, and they kind of looked like AI painted, sort of like portrait, like old Renaissance painting stuff. And then in addition to that, you would buy Pages, which was like basically a token that you could apply to your Poet, and then that Poet would write a poem. And so now there's like this whole marketplace and mechanic of like, if you have a Poet, your AI painted Poet, you want to buy Pages and apply those pages so that Poet writes like stories, and then like that Poet might become a famous AI writer at some point. Like,
crazy. POC is so far ahead of everyone.
It's so big brained. Like,
yeah,
every project of theirs redefines what these contracts, what these smart contracts, and what these tokens even mean.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you know, I wasn't a super huge fan of like earlier in the year they fractionalized the painting of the creation of man, like that old, you know.
Yeah, I didn't love that.
Michelangelo, and I liked it. Was an interesting experiment because it was like which pixels are people gonna pick of the painting, and of course it was like the fingers touching and like the face and like the groin, because why not?
Yeah.
Right. So, but like picking that artwork specifically because it was like an old and recognizable artwork that is probably not copyrightable. That's the part I didn't necessarily like, but like the stuff with like Mass and the cubes and Ash, Poets, like all of this is super, super revolutionary and is pushing forward. You know, you've got Mike, Beeple, doing his dailies, and we know the Christie sale, the $69 million, lot of, his 5,000 dailies, which is, don't get me wrong, it's a huge achievement in and of itself. It's basically selling a body of work, a lifetime of art. But this in earnest is pushing forward the medium of what NFTs can mean.
Absolutely.
And how we interact with them,
I mean, it's also a proof of concept where, you mentioned the gamification, but like this is where it's all headed, especially if you think like companies like, EA or Disney or, these gaming companies or, 343 or whatever, if they're not going to implement something like this, into their own ecosystem, you're crazy, Oh,
and it's already hitting mainstream. I mean, like, of course, with the, celebrity status of people and whatnot, and, Jimmy Fallon, all that. But I don't think we mentioned the Thanksgiving Day parade even had a NFT.
Yeah. They were doing that for charity, and I think one of them went for like What was it?
180K or something.
Yeah.
But this stuff is going to absolutely make its way into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The joke was with cubes, Pac tricked the everyday person into like basically FOMOing into an NFT for the first time because cubes were like a really, really huge drop on Nifty when they came out. They were like $500 a piece, and now they resell for like 50K plus.
Wow.
Which is an insane floor. And now I think what the joke I've seen on Twitter is with Mass or Merge, whatever you want to call this project, Pac is again tricking us into joining a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, which is more or less like the crypto or like Web3 version of like creating like a crowd funded or crowdsourced company, or like a clan or like a guild. Like if all of us in the Mograph Slack wanted to like pool our resources to like make money or make some bigger project, which would be bigger than any one of us, we could form a DAO. And that sort of leads to the next link on my thing. It's the intern token.
Okay.
So this was a group, or a thing that a guy named, his Twitter name is Silver Surfer, put this together specifically for this POC drop. Of basically they wanted to crowdfund becoming the alpha, so buying the most mass, and they raised like however many thousands of NFTs. Basically, like there was the website where you would mint your membership token for 0.13 ETH, and that was like a couple mass worth at the time. And they did like multiple, as the project got bigger and as it got funded more and more, like however many thousands of tokens were bought, they bought more and more mass as the leaderboard was sort of forming, and they figured out like how much mass they needed to buy. And again, this project is still unfolding, and what it will mean to have membership within this. Again, of course, not financial advice. I have no clue where this is going. I bought one disclosure, one of these little tokens on the secondary, just to try to see like what the heck's going on. I had sort of sat on the sidelines for previous projects that POC had done, and I decided like, now might be a good time to try to jump in on one. So I bought one mass, and I have one token for this little DAO. And what just to, as a vocabulary term, what a DAO affords you is like, in theory, when you buy a stock at a company, you are a shareholder, and with that comes like one vote or whatever, which is not really realistic, because like Ford Motor Company or whatever will have like 600 million shares. So like if you have 12 shares or whatever, like in your little index,
your vote doesn't really count.
Right, you're effectively nothing. And so because this is like, this is that same idea, but it's like much smaller in scale. There's only like a couple thousand tokens. In theory, you have a much, I don't want to say a great voice, but you have more of a voice within the community in terms of voting and proposing. Like, as the mechanics come out and we figure out what being the alpha means for that wallet, like maybe there'll be some sort of return, some sort of token, like who knows what might come back, where we might be able to get dividends on this drop. I mean, it's still all unfolding, and the potentials are limitless with POC. I mean, it seems like basically no idea is off limits, and no idea is impossible, because I think certainly there's the financial resource to be able to come up with the coding manpower to get any of this done, and certainly the creative side is there, and pushing forward what tokens and what NFTs can mean. So to me, that seemed like an interesting sort of thing to kind of jump into over the weekend. I will say that Discord server makes abusive use of the @everyone tag.
Oh gosh.
So that's a little bit of a negative there, but otherwise it seems like an interesting thing that I've had an interest sort of watching from the sidelines over the weekend as that formed. It's basically a project within a project, It's like this is its own token, its own sort of economy that sprouted up because of a release on a different platform, which I think, it's like there's, layers and levels to like how interesting and how exciting this all is. Next thing, next thing on
the
my
DAO
list.
stuff is very interesting to me.
Yeah, and
I need to look more into it because
lot-
Ariev was the first person to tell me about it with the release of what was it, the kitties, something like the mutant kitties or mutant cats, or I don't remember.
Was it you who sent me the comic about that this weekend with the, you know, the comic where there's
Was it
like
me?
a whole line of urinals and there's only one person?
No, it was someone else.
And then you know, somebody walks in and instead of picking the urinal on the other side, they
Right.
stand right next to their person.
Yeah.
It's like an ongoing meme, and this one said you should join our DAO or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I forget who sent that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like it's probably one of the better sort of future applications in terms of like what is capable with crowdfunding and stuff. You know, a couple weeks ago, a DAO formed to try to buy. This is serious. What I'm about to say.
The
They-
Constitution or
they were-
whatever.
They were going to buy a copy of the Constitution. So it was called one of, I think, 4 copies that were real. Like, this is a piece of paper from 1770,
Real
whatever.
deal.
Yeah.
It's a real copy. You know, Nicolas Cage,
Right.
national treasure.
Right.
Like, we're talking about a real thing here.
Mhm.
It went up for auction, and a DAO called Constitution DAO formed to crowdfund buying this piece of paper. I mean, yeah, it's a bit, you know, like it's a funny internet thing. Like when Dogecoin, you know, members, you know, rally together to fund like a NASCAR team,
Yeah.
which is a thing that happens. It has
Yeah.
happened twice. You know, the internet loves to run with a silly idea,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
DAO is it's a very practical way to put that together. And thanks to blockchain and like being able to buy in with like a cheap thing that like you get something out of it, and like you have a very like, it's obviously not a real tangible, like you're not getting a thing, you know, in real life, but like, you know, it's not just like sign a change.org petition where it just kind of like goes off into like nowhere and you have no idea like where this thing is going to go. You can like follow it and like see what's going on. You know, when Constitution DAO forums and it makes itself a Discord server, and then all of a sudden, you know, unfortunately they lost the bid. It seems like at the very end, somebody had an idea of how much max the Constitution DAO would have been able to bid, because like it was publicly known how much money they had, and you obviously you can't spend 100% of your money because this is like a really difficult piece of paper to like care for. So like they had a few million set aside to like figure out like, okay, like how do we store this? Where does it go? How do we keep it safe? You know, keep it valuable. That eats away from what their budget, and so somebody bid just ever so slightly above that and actually wound up winning it, you know, at the 11th hour of the auction or whatever. But in exchange for what the people had put into it, they got like a coin, you know, or coins depending on how much they put in, and like even that coin like shot up like the next week, and it's like people were able to like 10x like the money that they were able to put into it. I don't know how. I didn't follow it closely enough to figure out like what Constitution tokens are worth and what was generating the value for them, but some people were able to make a pretty good chunk of change out of that. Like basically an internet joke, you know?
And the price of ETH dropped during.
Yeah.
What's a conspiracy theory?
Well, I mean, over the day of I think it was Sotheby's, the auction, you know, house closing, because the Constitution DAO was bidding in ETH. At closing time, whatever their ETH bid would have been converted to USD, and it did in fact go down. I don't recall the details on if those over the course of the day did those fluctuations actually make them lose the bid, or like
I gotcha.
was that person, was the other bidder actually aware of how much cap, like max, that they would have been able to outbid and been able to secure it themselves? It could have been one or the other, or maybe a little bit of both. Who knows? But yeah, that's definitely. It would have been hilarious for the internet to own a copy of the Constitution. And mind you, this wasn't like
great.
This was owned by a private collector who put it up for sale. It's not like the internet was trying to hijack like a government thing, like, you know, renaming like, you know, Bodie McBoatface
I was
Right,
gonna say
right,
Bodie
right.
McBoatface. Yeah, that I was actually gonna bring that up. Wow. Yeah. Man, my head hurts.
I'm
Like when this
it,
stuff,
the
it's so
I,
it gets so complicated.
you
I
know,
don't know where to
and it's so
start.
funny. Like 2 years ago, we're thinking, okay, what's the future of motion design going to look
Right.
like? You know, and it's like
And now we're all
it
stock
it
traders.
it yeah, right. It does not look like I never thought it would look like this. You
Right.
know, not like this, not like this. You know, I don't know. A lot to look forward to.
What you got next on the list here?
Speaking of historical stuff, this last week, CryptoPunks versus Bored Ape Yacht Club kind of
Yeah.
became a little bit of a war on Twitter.
Interesting.
I own an ape, and it would be cool to own a punk someday, just because of the historical. They weren't the first NFT, but they
Right.
are the first surviving and flourishing NFT from back in the the
Right.
first wave in 2017.
Wave.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like they weren't the biggest at the time, because CryptoKitties were the first one that really in earnest blew up, but those died off fairly quickly.
Mhm.
Whereas punks managed to stick around. But I think what comes of the last week, because we've seen the floor price on punks drop like 30% or more.
Mhm.
It stems from their parent company, Larva Labs, being pretty silent in terms of what the future and what it means to own a CryptoPunk. One of the main value propositions for owning an ape, a Bored Ape, is the fact that you get IP rights to that one ape.
Right.
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 And I in earnest believe that someday in our life we'll see a Bored Ape slinging Coca-Cola.
Yep.
I'm sure.
Like that polar,
100%.
the polar bear that they trot out every winter time. We're gonna see a monkey selling
Mhm.
us bottles of Coca-Cola,
Mhm.
because of what that IP license affords the owner of that token.
Yeah.
See,
And
Billy, why don't you get out there and start like pushing it? You're like, oh, I got an ape. You
Yeah.
know, you wanna, buy some rights to be able to advertise using my ape.
that's an avenue. I mean, that
Yeah.
absolutely, that once you own one, you have the ability to leverage that one ape in any way you see fit.
Mhm.
And that's not the case with CryptoPunks.
Yeah.
Larva Labs themselves have signed a representation deal with I'm forgetting what, some big PR firm or like a
Mhm.
ad agency or something, but that doesn't apply to the individual punks themselves. It only applies to like the whole collection.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And that sort of ruffled the feathers of the different token holders. Not that this was a secret to anybody.
Mhm.
CryptoPunks were certainly very far ahead of the game, being basically an experiment years ago that none of us really could have ever foresaw any of this IP value ever being on the table.
Right.
But the fact that they as a company have been silent or have not wanted to retroactively apply that, I think has bummed out a lot of people. And so that's why you've seen this sort of solidarity amongst punk owners of like, whether or not they used their CryptoPunk as their profile, they would switch back to it. I saw this a lot on Sunday, yesterday, where people were like, "Yep, we're back to the punk avatar. I'm going to stand with my people.
Mhm.
Even if this goes down to zero, people recognize that like the floor price of CryptoPunks shooting up in April, in May of this year is really what spurred a lot of this 10K profile picture stuff.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Bored Apes themselves coming out at a really fortunate time, and with very good founders who have acted very well on
Yeah.
a proposed roadmap, and they've achieved a lot. So they've have generated their own value, but they had to make that value. Whereas CryptoPunks at the start of this year already had momentum going into it with no competition.
Yeah.
So they sort of have that first to market. I know they're not first to market, but in the context of
Right,
this
yeah.
year, this cycle of the market, they're effectively the first to market, first mover advantage. and everyone else had to play catch up. And it looks like that could be switching. A lot of people are saying like apes are going to flip punks, and as an owner of one, of course, I wouldn't be mad if apes became more valuable than punks, but it would have been nice if it meant that apes were rising instead of punks falling. Because the punk floor, the punk floor was like 90 something, and apes was somewhere in like the mid 40s about a week ago. Whereas now I think punks are in like the 60s and apes are at 50. So it's like apes have gone up a little, but punks have really fallen.
Yeah.
And it would have been cool if we both lifted, but it just, it meant that, Bored Ape Yacht Club doubled. It would have been nicer for us to double than for them to have.
Right.
Because, that money benefits everybody, as people are buying and reselling and shuffling assets around, there's some amount of like kind of trickle down between projects. You got CryptoPunks, you get priced out of that, and then it's like, oh, I want an ape. You get priced out of that, then you're like, all right, well, I'll get like a cool cat. If you get priced out of that, you get a doodle or whatever. So it's like this benefits everybody if you've jumped into one of these projects that's sort of risen. It's if it's risen up at least enough to kind of get like sort of mainstream front page success on OpenSea, then you're really you're in the money at that point. And of course, getting there is hard because there's a new project releasing every day.
Yeah. I've talked a few times about my Slim Hoods. I'm not sure if you've seen them at all. Like there was
that's James Caron, right?
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure.
I want to say that's him.
It very well could be. But like it was cool. Like the Slim Hoods, I bought one for like, 0.035 ETH or something, or maybe it was, it was 0.035. It was like 100 and something bucks, right? And it eventually, like, I didn't care. I liked them. I thought they were cool. And the floor at one point went to like 0.001 or something. You could buy them for 26 bucks. Now they're almost at 0.1, which is way cool. Yeah, I was really happy about that. It's because they announced some like big collaboration with like, invisible people or something like that, and rollers. It's the Random Character Collective.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. It's neat. Yeah.
Billy's looking for his next note. I got it right here.
Yes, it is.
Oh no, I was responding to somebody in my Discord asking if they'd be able to watch later.
Oh yeah.
But so next thing on the list is over the last month we've seen the rise of quote play to earn crypto games. So like,
is that like the
wolf
like
game?
The sheep wool and
Yeah.
So this is where I first learned about DAOs, you know, and the it was through the cats or like the mutant cats, and you get fish and stuff like that or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So a lot of these coins that sprout up with these projects relate to the idea of staking, which in blockchain terms, you've got a proof of work blockchain, which a lot of them work on now, which is computationally intensive. And what we'll be moving forward to in Ethereum is staking, which is you have an amount of ETH and you stake that, which is basically you freeze it, and in collateral what you get is a small return on that kind of like interest. And what that does is it is Ethereum that you've sort of pledged to the network, and that allows you to run a validator, which is basically what confirms all of the transactions. So right now, blocks on the blockchain are comprised of all of our transactions, and people's computers are essentially fighting over, the computation to earn that chunk of gas, that network transaction fee. Whereas in exchange, I would pledge, my ETH and join either like a staking pool, or I would be able to stake on my own, which is what a lot of these smaller projects have now done, where if you pledge in the case of Wolf game or whatever, it's a game where you can buy either you would mint a token and it would be a sheep, but you'd have a small chance of getting a wolf, which is more valuable, and it would be able to steal other people's sheep. And if you have a sheep, what you would do is you would stake it. So basically, like, you kind of freeze it. You can't buy or sell it, and in return, you get back wool tokens, like, $wool, which is its currency. Which then the next phase of the project, they released or announced, which this project has kind of been put on hold a couple times because of like bugs, exploits and like flaws in the code that they've had to like basically pause and fix and then reinstate the game. So I don't know if it's currently actively running or not, but one of the proposed or future features is going to be like you get to make like a farmer guy, and like you have a plot of land, and with like Decentraland and sandbox game, like these VR worlds, where you have like actual land in a virtual like zone that you can walk around in or whatever. You'll have like this little plot with like your little farm in Wolf game. And to me, if none of this makes any sense, think of it as like the crypto version of like a Farmville.
Yeah.
Where like it's kind of like it's a little browser game, and like instead of you making Farmville bucks or whatever, you get a cryptocurrency token back by playing it. Hence the name Play to Earn. And so that's probably the future of like little browser, like sort of mobile games and stuff. This is a very, it was extremely fast to rise up in popularity. Like the first weekend where this really broke out, mainstream, because again, this gamification and like the notions of supply and demand, there was only so many sheep that were able to be like resold, because most people staked their sheep. So like that sort of drove down the active supply of sheep that people could buy. Like if you wanted to buy and start playing the game, you need a sheep in order to do that. But most of the people had staked their sheep. So like the small handful of ones that remained actively tradable, like those shot up to like, I think mint was like 0.05 or 0.0 whatever, but like I think a sheep was like 7 ETH, and a wolf was like 15 or like 20 plus. So it like, again, this seems like a very small like thing to jump into, like
these are rich people games.
True, but like and again, it's, you never really know which project is going to blow up, so that's why it's it's kind of a bit of a numbers game, if you want to increase your odds. But this is I could not get away from seeing this thing on my timeline when it was like at its peak.
Interesting.
So yeah, that was something that I wanted kind of to mention. If you've liked games like little browser stuff or like little kind of financy sort of economy type games, and you're not necessarily like super into the art, there's absolutely a component of that in crypto, that you can entertain yourself in, or like hell, like you could even probably get your kid to play Wolf game for you, and you just make all the money, and they like to have fun playing it because it's a game, but you're sitting there getting thousands of dollars of wool tokens.
Right.
Like, I mean,
that's 100%. I was thinking how much my wife loves Farmville, and
you hire her.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Oh, it's funny. Man. I'm serious. Like that's 100% the future of where gaming is gonna go. Like imagine being able to buy. I mean, that's really like a big portion of the metaverse as well. It's like imagine being able to buy an asset on like a site and then bringing that over to whichever video game will accept those specific assets. You just link your wallet to that, and it's like, all right, good. I'm good to go.
Right. And as the game industry sort of develops, like this might not be a great outcome for the health of the game industry, but like just as an example, think of every game that's made with Unreal Engine. You could buy like a hat or whatever in some Unreal Engine NFT marketplace, and then maybe that hat is formatted for any game engine,
right?
And like that's a wearable item, and like the developers might not even really need to do a whole lot, just because like, hey, this is a thing that was made in Unreal, it's already formatted for us. Like there's probably a version of that, like a closed garden kind of thing, but then there might be like an open source equivalent for that, down the road.
Like you're buying a GLTF or whatever file,
Yeah,
and that one,
GTFO file.
GTF, and it's like, okay, that one can be incorporated specifically because they can accept GLTF files.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
like imagine buying your dead mouse, one of the dead heads or whatever,
Yeah.
and one of the heads, and then because
You can
you've
wear
got
it in
that,
Halo.
you can wear it
Yeah.
in Halo, right?
Right.
You'd be a terrible target, but
Yeah.
And
you can wear it in
as-
Halo.
Distraction.
as 3D artists, we have the ability to make that content.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I years ago I was much more into playing like modified versions of PC games like Fallout or whatever, where you can like add all kinds of equipment and like super awesome stuff. And if you were like a hobbyist 3D artist who wants to make like levels or like little mods or whatever, there's very realistically a future here where you make your little rifle model as a GLTF or whatever, and that thing could be uploaded and could be mintable and used cross-platform between games. I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do that.
And the cool thing is, like, I mean, once say you mint it, you own it, you're able to bring it into your own game, and then you can also resell it. You know, that's the great thing about the smart contracts. Yeah.
Yeah, Francisco is saying, Nike, with Roblox is, Roblox being like a younger audience sort of skewing game, but having a very real brand partnership with like a real brand.
Yeah. What else you got for us, Billy? Anything else?
Next thing, still in the gaming world, over the weekend, yesterday, Bored Ape Yacht Club was going to be releasing a mobile game, kind of like
Give me 1 second, guys. Someone's at my front door.
So like their little mobile game was like kind of like a top-down shooter, like think of like Contra or like whatever your old 2D like top-down shooter.
1.
Yeah, exactly, right. So like you're playing as your little Bored Ape, and you're fighting enemies with like bananas and whatever other items. It was going to be on both Android and Apple. Unfortunately, the App Store took it down literally like an hour before it was supposed to release, so they kind of had to put that on hold. I unconfirmed, of course, and this is just my opinion, but I would imagine it could potentially tie into like how Apple takes a 30% cut of in-game purchases and stuff. The fact that this is like a app that ties into NFTs and there's no revenue directly through the app itself, I don't know what the monetization scheme was, but I could very realistically see that being a problem to an app store that would want a percentage cut. And that could have been one of the reasons that the plug got pulled on that. Unfortunate, because they had like a bunch of prizes, like the top 100 or top 500 or top 30, top 1, whatever. There was all these different prize pools of like I think the number one winner for the game would have won like a mutant ape like car, like a full, like a modified car, like a pinball cabinet.
I thought the pinball was the first place, and then the second place was like a 96 Honda Accord.
Yeah. So I think first place winner could pick between
Corsica. That would have been great, right?
But yeah, then there was other prizes for like top 30, top 100, whatever. Unfortunately, all that's been put on hold thanks to Apple. So we'll see. Hopefully, they can get back on track with that. I know the Yuga Labs team, that's the originators of Bored Ape. They're hard at work, and they're a smart team, and I'm sure they'll be able to overcome it in time. But I joked in the Discord yesterday. I said anyone who can afford an ape can afford a cheap burner Android phone. Right. And we can get this game. We can get this game back on track.
Yeah, I'm sure that Apple is probably trying to figure this thing out at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the Apple's trying to figure out, okay, where do we fall in here? How are we going to do this? Where does crypto come? I mean, they're certainly coming up with a game plan, but, they probably won't release anything for years to come.
Probably, most likely, yeah. So, an unfortunate casualty of being early, because it seems like they had their game approved in like the test version of Apple, like App Store stuff. Like it was working, it ran, you know. It just unfortunately when they went like literally an hour before they went to send us like the download links for the games, they announced in the Discord that Apple, without any notice or explanation, they pulled it. So that was a bummer.
Yeah.
So next thing on the list is another interesting, weird project. Again, leveraging kind of the future of what crypto and art and AI and staking and tokens.
Where can I see this list, Dave and Billy?
It's on Notion under the
Is it on
episode.
Notion? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's called Botto, Botto.
I've heard of this.
Yeah. So it's like an AI art painter thing. I've talked about it in the Discord a couple times because over the summer there was like a snapshot, which as a term is basically like, you know, somebody will mark a point in time, and if you had a certain asset in your crypto wallet, then at that snapshot you're basically included. And what happened was they made this token and they snapshot users for like art glyphs, Bored Apes, like a handful of other notable projects over the summer. And so having owned my ape from like the second day, I got some of these tokens. And what it affords you the ability is to go to the website, app.botto.com, and you basically get to vote on like you're essentially either upvoting or downvoting this like AI generative art. Think of like, you know, Google Deep Dream mixed with, you know, like a Renaissance painter or whatever. And so Dave, if you can pull up the little Dropbox video, I did a small little screen recording of using it. So this is kind of the website when you go to it. You can, I clicked on the wrong one, but if you sort of go through the video, you can start to learn more about what this project is, and over time, basically the art gets decided, and they sell this art on Super Rare, and you know Botto has made a number of quite successful sales on Super Rare, and it's all basically what art it's making is decided by these upvotes. You know, as a holder of Botto coin, you get like these little voting points, and like there's a little slider at the bottom where you can weight how many points you want your vote to go in. And here I'm basically just like upvoting one of these by either hitting left or right on my keyboard.
But what's crazy is they're all so good.
Yeah, they're all really, really cool. And in theory, over time, this thing will sort of develop a style based on, you know, the community's voting patterns. And, you know, you vote on a couple of them, and then you kind of submit your vote, and it takes your voting tokens, you know, that way, like, you know, it's a transaction or whatever. But it in that case, voting doesn't cost any gas. But like, you know, when you get airdropped those tokens based on the snapshot, I decided to stake them so that I could participate in the voting component of this. Otherwise, I could have just sold them. I could have just sold the tokens on Uniswap. But I think at the time I got them, it was like $1,800 worth if I would have just like sold them, which was just free. Just, you know, like a couple weeks ago, there was the big airdrop for people who had ENS, like your Ethereum domain. You know, there was that big airdrop. You know, again, airdrops and like tokens and staking, all these weird, funny terms, but you know, they're means to participate in this kind of future of crypto and, you know, the future of the internet and the web and stuff. And I genuinely think if you spent all day long on the internet finding these things and tokens and looking up like who's going to have an airdrop, I honestly think you could make like a good salary just doing that, like not even working like a normal job. Because just there's so many of these projects kind of like, you know, launching and, you know, getting off the ground, that, you know, the value of these airdrop tokens is pretty substantial in some cases. You know, people got tens of thousands of dollars just for holding their Ethereum domain.
Yeah.
And like for me, the Botto thing, I thought it was pretty cool because like, as the as Botto, the account sells things on Super Rare and it gains ETH. Essentially, what it does is it buys the token back off of Uniswap and then it burns those tokens. So over time, the quantity of Botto currency will go down as Botto sells more and more artwork. So that means, in theory, of course, all of this is in theory because we're talking about the future and like what prices might mean in the future.
Right.
But in theory, the circulating supply of this coin will go down, which means that the amount that I have will increase in value. These couple hundred tokens that I got airdropped. So I think that's like again, another interesting byproduct of like owning this other token, my monkey JPEG. I was then introduced to this like crazy AI generative art project, which, it's fun to vote on things, using a little keyboard shortcut and like thinking like, oh, like what painting does that look like? Or like, what style is that? Kind of cool stuff.
Billy, I hate to tell you this, but I right-clicked and saved as your ape, and now I own your ape.
Oh, dang. I hope you can right-click sell that.
Yeah.
That's the comeback.
That's a good one. Or the old Mona Lisa thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a picture of the Mona Lisa too, but I don't own it.
Yep.
Yeah. You got some NFT influencers to check out?
Yeah, so kind of, bringing us towards the end here of the list, I got a couple accounts. If any of this was interesting and you want to learn more or kind of just, if you want to know who I follow, of course, you can just go to my Twitter and look at who I follow, of course. But I picked out a couple notable accounts. Should any of you want to jump into finding some more influencers and people who have interesting takes, the first one is Punk6529. This is a fellow, I think from following him long enough, I want to say this person's in the UK. But what they're notable for are these very long threads, really well written and like thought out, basically like a thesis, like one or two of these threads per week. And they've done many of them. I've seen threads for NFT security. Recently, there was one for NFT photographers specifically. And like, there are other ones like, for example, onboarding your family to NFTs, onboarding newcomers. So I linked a couple of those threads specifically to you. Yeah, so this one is, oncoming newcomers to NFT Twitter. This one's kind of like a vocabulary list, which it starts out a little bit more surface level, but again, these are long threads. Some of them are like 60 tweets plus, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. If you follow this account over time,
Fred. That's funny. No, this is great for somebody who's just starting out.
Getting up to speed and jumping into this culture, it can seem daunting. The three of us have been following it, and obviously knowing artists like people and whoever over the years, just knowing them as artists, and then watching this NFT stuff explode over the last year and a half. We kind of had a front row seat to it. But if you think of the context of like a lay person who knows nothing about animation or design and has no entryway to what any of these words mean, this is a good resource. So the next thread from Punk6529 is a thread about NFT security.
Cool.
And this is a deep dive. This is like if you want to build Fort Knox and you've got like, multiple separated seed phrases that are like all over the country or all over the globe in separate places, and like you have like tens of millions of dollar like NFT vault, all the way down to like I want to buy a ledger, like a little hardware device. It runs the whole gamut. So I know you guys wanted to talk to me a little bit about crypto security. This is a really good thread if you want to make your way through it up until kind of like the really, really deep, like where it goes like, off the deep end into like, you know, nuclear Secret Service level Fort Knox type of security. Certainly your everyday user doesn't need to go that deep.
Right.
But just as like to refer back in the show notes or like the links, that's a really good thing for, you know, viewers or, you know, the audience to reference. But that, you know, we can sort of open to a conversation about my outlook on some of that stuff. If you guys have questions, you know, of course.
I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it now or here in a minute. Let's talk about it in a minute, but we'll
Yeah.
briefly touch on some of the security
I've been
stuff.
I've been moving all my stuff over to an authenticator app. You know, that's the number one thing that I feel like people can do in order to, you know, protect themselves, at least the first step.
Yep, absolutely. So to brush up anybody who might not necessarily know, when you sign into a website, of course, you have either a username or like a email login and an associated password. And for most websites, you know, your Facebook or, you know, maybe not Facebook's a great example, but something low stakes like you signing into Pinterest, for example. You know, there's no money involved in Pinterest. It's not necessarily something that you would perceive as being high value. Let's just start there. You got your username, your password, and that's probably it. You don't really need a whole lot more. Of course, ideally, you want unique passwords for every website. And using a password manager like, you know, Google Chrome has a built-in password manager or something like LastPass or whatever, where it will generate passwords for you and save them, you know, onto the device or into a cloud or some sort of closed service, is much better than just you using one generic password that you as a human have the ability to remember. That's very bad practice. Just using a password for multiple things. And of course, using that with any service that ties into money or ties into any other sort of security or backup or authentication stuff. So the next level up from just having a password is using some form of two-factor authentication. You know, receiving some sort of code or some sort of verification procedure that upon signing in, you need to do this additional step, hence the name two-factor. You try to log in, that's your first step, and then this authenticating is the second step. It is not a good idea to use SMS, which is like text message based.
Right.
As we've learned from David Aryev's.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately. So a couple weeks ago, our, you know, good friend of the show, David, he fell victim in no way of his own wrongdoing. You know, no mistake made on his part.
Right.
If a malicious person knows what phone provider you have and they know your phone number, in theory, what they could do is find a store. This is, say, Verizon. It's one of the larger phone carriers here in the US. You go into a Verizon store, you know the person's phone number, you walk in, you say like, oh my God, you know, I'm here traveling, you know, my mom died, you know, back home. I urgently need to get home and book a flight and I lost my phone. Can you get me a new phone and a new SIM? And they reissue all the new same stuff so that way it's you and you can get back in contact with your loved ones or whatever, and you can get back home. That's a very plausible, very easy story to come up with. And as long as you can like act dramatically in a store or on the phone with one of these customer service reps, probably 99 times out of 100, they will issue you that new SIM card. And through that allows you, the malicious actor, to intercept these login codes. So, for example, you got your Gmail, and which is a high value target, of course, you know, an email address that more stuff is going to redirect to is a very valuable target. So you find the username, you get the password. Your next means to get into that account is to defeat the two-factor authentication. And in the event of the person having their phone number set as that means of two-factor, well, you now have their account because you have their SIM card, and you can receive that call or you can receive that code to your device and not, you know, the real account holder. So that's why using SMS or phone-based when I say phone based, I mean the phone in a phone's sake, like it's making phone calls, it's sending out messages. Um, because the proper or the more robust way is an authenticator app that runs on that phone.
Yeah.
So
Only that phone.
right, only that phone. So much the same way that we, as people who have MetaMask or some sort of crypto wallet, you have your seed phrase written down, which allows you to regenerate that wallet should anything happen or should you lose access to a device. You basically get brought back up to speed, and you get to make a duplicate of that login. A password manager such as Authy or Google Authenticator has that same seed phrase. So you can download the app, you can install it to your phone, and in the event of signing into Nifty Gateway or your bank or your Coinbase or whatever, you got your username, you got your password, and then you've got your two-factor code, which is generated by that phone, only on that phone. And of course, you're susceptible to an in-person attack. There's no security measure that makes you impervious to all things forever in perpetuity. You can level up stuff by following the thread that Punk 6529 lays out, where he goes like nuclear launch code levels of security, where you need multiple people in multiple locations around the world acting in tandem in order to regenerate a seed phrase. You can go that far, but for most everyday person, being susceptible to what is called a wrench attack, just like I'm going to hit you over the head with a wrench until you give me the password. Like in real life, most of us are fairly safe. It's the internet or it's remote attack vectors where we are vulnerable. And so securing things where you need your person, whether it's a passcode that or it's a seed phrase that only you have written down, it's not saved in a Google Doc somewhere. Please, dear God, don't do that. If you have your seed phrase, unfortunately, if you've ever typed it into a computer so much, I would make a new wallet. Let me repeat that. If you've ever even typed that seed phrase into a computer device, please make a new wallet, because you can never guarantee that if you've gotten like a keylogger or some sort of virus or something, which whether retroactively it was already on your computer and then you made this thing and they can gain access to this piece of information, or in the future you might download something which can then scan your computer or it can get into your logins, whatever. Please only have that stuff physically IRL. And ideally, stuff like seed phrases, you can get a piece of metal. There's a device called Crypto Steel, which is kind of like a little metal silver platter thing. And with that comes little words where it's fire resistant and waterproof, to where like, you got like your little thumb drive looking thing, like a ledger. Yeah, if your house burns down or, you lose that thing physically, it gets lost, somebody steals it from you, whatever. That is not compromised. You don't lose access to that forever because you have this physical metal piece, and it's just a matter of keeping that thing secure, which physically in real life is much more, you're much more hands-on in being able to keep that safe because there are fewer means to attack it. Of course, if you flaunt crypto IRL, which is kind of paradoxical because I'm saying that while I'm wearing a Bored Ape Yacht Club shirt, which I can only buy this shirt having owned an ape. So if somebody knows that, again, do as I say, not as I do. In this context, flaunting your crypto assets in real life still you're increasing your risk of a wrench attack, which like the joke, somebody's going to stuff you into the back of a van and hit you with a wrench until you give them whatever you want to give them.
The seed phrase that you probably don't remember because it's on.
Right, but
they'll be asking you where it is.
Right, exactly. And you can play this game out in infinite number of scenarios, and with that comes the idea of a decoy wallet, which, like, you set up let's just say you have 1,000 ETH, and you set up a second wallet that has like 15 ETH or whatever, which would be a pretty healthy payday for somebody to kidnap you and receive as ransom. You give them enough to where they buy that's the stash,
actual, right?
and
Right.
then the rest of it is like somewhere buried even further and deeper underground or somewhere.
PO box, maybe. I don't know. What about a PO
Maybe.
box? Do you think that's safe?
Well, okay, so there's an argument here with pros and cons of like, I'm saying you should only have your seed phrase IRL should be the only copies of it, copy or copies, depending. Some people think a bank safe deposit box or PO box, some other institutional thing, is probably a decent way to handle that.
That's what I meant, not a PO box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like a safe deposit box at a bank, in theory, only you have access to it. But of course, somewhere, somehow, bank employee, somebody has the ability. I mean, hell, what happens if you lose the key to that safe deposit box and they have to cut a new key? Somebody somewhere has the ability to get into that thing. Whether whether they should be able to or not is another story. But, insider trading or, like malicious people acting from within an institution is not an unheard of threat.
Now, it's probably safer than, say, like, I don't know. It's probably safer than what we were talking about earlier, which is
like saving it to the cloud.
Well, all right. A couple things. First of all, I'm going to backtrack a minute. Do you think that doing your seed phrase and having it like engraved, do you think there's a certain way you should go about that? Number one. Number two, the other thing I was going to mention, that's what it was whenever somebody goes in and manipulates like an employee, it's probably safer than that. But even like a couple weeks ago, Matt and I were talking about the fact that like you could go get your seed phrase engraved somewhere, but then that person, if they know what a seed phrase is, they're going to know what it is, right? So then maybe you do half of it at the mall and then do half of it on Amazon or something. I don't know. Like,
right.
But a bank would be safer than like the whole two-factor authentication thing.
But like,
as far as like what do you call it? Social engineering.
Yeah, but like they're saying in the chat, you stop paying for your safe deposit box or something like that, you're gonna lose it.
Also, the flip side of that is it is, whether this is news to you or not. Spoiler: when a bank branch moves, they don't need to notify you that bank branch is closing, nor do they need to liquidate or do anything to inform anybody of any of the contents or any of the people who actively own and maintain safe deposit boxes there. They should, and in many cases they do, warn those customers, but there's no legal mandate. There's no, like,
But they don't just get rid of it. They move it. You're talking about when they're going to move the contents. If a bank closes, they're not going to just like throw it all in the trash.
No, and you would like to think that they would give you the opportunity to come in and retrieve whatever, they've done, but it's a very realistic outcome. And I've seen, horror stories on like Reddit or whatever, separate from crypto, specifically just safety deposit boxes of people failing to be informed of that bank branch moving, and then things get lost, shuffled around. Let's just say the bank that you're at right now has 100 safety deposit boxes, so 0 to 100, and you're number 60. When that branch moves and those boxes get reassigned to a bigger branch, that bigger branch absorbs those. There might not necessarily be a clear trail of what contents go where into what boxes. And if you were to fail to be informed, whether you missed the notification, they outright didn't send you the notification, you changed, they didn't get your new mailing address, whatever, you can pick an infinite number of scenarios to where what is in what box and who has what key gets shuffled around. And whether that's you don't have access to your new box, or somebody has access, somebody who had previously had that box has access to your box, there's again another million. There's another million different outcomes of like you because it's not on your property and you don't have sole control over it, unfortunately, it's in somebody else's custody. And with that comes some amount of chance that other people can gain access to it. And the flip side of this is like, if you live in an apartment, or say like you're in school, you're in a college dorm, your RA or your landlord or whoever has access to your house. And with that comes they have physical access to where you may or may not store your physical key, or where your device, or where your seed phrase is. And so with that comes another layer of necessary security to where like
safe.
Right, it's a time locked safe that's physically connected to where you live, or something along those lines. You know, there are also even safes where you open the safe via an authenticator app on your phone. Like there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of ways to work with here, but again, just throwing out another potential security vulnerability, because like, you know, we're talking about a Bored Ape here that's worth $250,000 at this point. That's a very high value target.
And that's exactly what they were targeting with David.
Right. Yep. And if you think pre-crypto, you know, let's just say 30 years ago or whatever, you're, you know, a common criminal and you're trying to scope out a house to break into, or maybe let's just say you're not even scoping out a house. Maybe you're the kind of criminal, you just break into something and you just see what you get. You know, you're going to be looking for watches, jewelry, whatever. But like, there is very realistically a scenario where you break into a thing and you have no clue what you've got on your hands. You know, that might have been fine, like however many years ago. But like now, you know, there are these websites with, you know, a freaking OpenSea listing. Somebody could, you know, very realistically dox me and see which ape I have and see how valuable it is, and then wrench attack me. You know, so like just by virtue of being on this podcast, and like I don't want to go too tinfoil hatty on anybody, but like there are very realistic and valuable security lessons to learn here.
You do have to think about it. It's it's not too tinfoil hat. Just at least start thinking about it.
Right. I mean, and you know, at least fortunately for me, I was raised by a very common criminal. You know, my dad used me as the lookout at the end of the aisle at Toys R Us so that he would, you know, pocket stuff. And, you know, he told me to whistle if I saw an employee. Like, I got a lesson in that when I was like 7 years old. And like, I've carried that with me like my whole life. So like, if it sounds crazy, it's realistic. When it comes to what means somebody might like go through in order to gain access to something that you have that you want to keep. And multiple layers of the right security that overlaps and complements each other well is very necessary, because there are an infinite number of ways to approach gaining access to somebody's stuff, you know, whether it's a SIM swap or whether it's a social engineering. Like this is an example I can come up with right off the top of my head, but let's just say you started sending emails as if you were a producer at Buck, and it was like a link to a Google Drive, a PDF of like, hey, here's this artboard. Like, hey, you know, we want to bring you animator kid on this super cool job. Like, please download this link and look it over. And boom, it's a malicious file that's going to scrape, you know, a keylogger that's going to steal your seed phrase.
Like similar things have happened to our friends.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you know, thankfully we crypto artists are coming at this from the art side, and the crypto people, sort of hacker, bad actor people, are not necessarily knowledgeable about the art side. So like, you know, that idea of what I just listed out is a very real and very plausible way to attack an individual artist. But thankfully, it's very low likelihood of that, like realistically becoming a threat. But it is very much a threat. I mean, think about how many people would jump at the opportunity to work with a big name studio and would very happily click on a Google Drive link.
Check those email addresses. Make sure they're coming from someone legit. And
I mean, tinfoil hat, like the bank is probably pretty secure.
It's probably pretty secure. And
more secure. Yeah.
If you're in a shared living space where other people have potentially have access to you, or have potentially unlimited time access. And what I mean by that is like, it's very difficult to brute force your way into logging into like a device like a Ledger, just by like the UX of it.
Right.
But that doesn't
years,
right.
thousands,
But that doesn't
trillions of years, possibly.
right. But that doesn't mean it's not impossible if they get, say, half your seed phrase, whatever. Like if you're the kind of person where it's like, I'm going to put half my seed phrase at my house and
Right.
half of it at the in-laws
Makes it
house
easier.
or whatever, it doesn't. There's unfortunately no way that's going to be perfect, but there are some ways that are better than others, provided you know some of the parameters or some of the constraints within how this stuff works. Like understanding the sort of timeline that it would take to crack a cryptographic password or like a seed phrase, something like that. Learning about something like that, even if it's boring as an artist, it can leave you better prepared to setting up your means of defense. Because if you limit how much access, what kind of access, how long they have access to that thing, etc., that's important. That's why like the Authenticator app on the phone generates a new password every 30 seconds, because 30 seconds is a pretty reasonable amount of time should you, the user, invoke that key. But
It's almost not enough time sometimes, but
right.
Yeah.
It's almost right. And there's a reason it's only 30 seconds, because like if that code lasted a day, conceivably somebody out there somewhere could have the computing resources to brute force that within that time window.
Right.
And that's why, for example, if you live in an apartment and you have known crypto assets and you travel out of town for a week, that is 7 days, 144 hours or whatever of a potential window for somebody to make action within. And that's another thing to be realistic and be, mindful of. Not even just password stuff, but like physical access, the length of time, how many steps they might need to go through in order to gain access, actual genuine access to your asset.
Well, I didn't get access, or I had the Authenticator app. I was using the Authenticator app for a while, but I didn't really set a bunch of things to use it until after I got my new phone. And I'm wondering now, I was wondering, did I screw something up because I didn't think about it back then, as far as like moving the Authenticator app over. Like if you lose your phone.
Well, that's the thing is like, I don't want to open it up and show it directly on my phone because it's a QR code, but like, within the Google Authenticator app, you have the ability, should you have the phone, you have the device, it's currently physically working in front of you, you can open up a means to export that as a seed phrase effectively.
Right.
So should your phone get stolen while you're out on vacation or whatever, you can go get a new device and you'll be able to import that seed phrase or file, whatever, once you get back to, home base, you can get set back up and, restore and recover from losing access to that. That's very important to do while you have the device. You can't do that post, losing access.
But that's something that I didn't really think about back when I did that swap, because I only had a couple things at the time that were using it. And now that I'm really into it, I'm like, okay, now I need to make sure, because I'm pretty sure that because I restored from an iCloud backup, somehow it brought that back in.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
I think
but,
that is the case.
And so now I'm wondering, well, wait a minute. Now, does that mean that
because
iCloud
my
backups
authenticator, that's
even though
I'm
they're
curious about
encrypted,
that too. I wonder, it makes me worry because I'm pretty sure that's the exact same thing that happened to me as well. It's like, okay, so if someone were to SIM swap, right, and then somehow have my access to my whatever my iCloud is attached to, and be able to download that, resync it, they'd have my Authenticator app,
right?
Wouldn't they?
I can't speak to that. I'm not an iPhone user, so what protocol iCloud backups go through.
But you're still back. I mean, you would have to authenticate I mean, there's like a two-factor authentication even for iCloud itself. There's a lot of layers of two-factor authentication you'd have to go through. But I don't know. Maybe not.
That's absolutely worth looking into if you're an iOS user.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is if you're on something like AT&T, for example, I know T-Mobile is notorious for having these swap problems because apparently nobody asked for ID or anything. But when you do anything at AT&T, they ask you for this PIN, and I'm pretty sure if you've added that PIN number into your layer of security, that even somebody at the store cannot even access your account or do anything for you until they type in that PIN number that you give them.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's helpful.
I post Aryev's incident, people have come out and figured out, like, based on your phone carrier, what steps do you need to do to enroll or to disallow other people from being able to enroll and getting a new SIM card on your account. That's necessary to look up depending on your phone carrier. I would recommend anyone in the audience go through the necessary steps to either remove the ability to get a new SIM card or limit it to in-person access only, or tie it to some sort of passcode or PIN code that can only be done that way. Because, like, as of right now, depending on your phone carrier, they literally only need to know your phone number and your phone provider. That's the only two pieces of information they need, plus the ability to act like emotional and, like, make it sound urgent, and boom,
Now, see, Vernon says that the app would be installed, but it would be empty. And maybe it's just been too long and I don't remember this, but like I don't remember logging back into it. Maybe I opened it up on my iPad and just resynced it or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, but the point of all of that is you have to have that tinfoil hat mind when you're going about this, not to be like super paranoid or whatever, but just to think a couple steps ahead, just to make sure that you're really thinking through that and saying, okay, what's the weakest link right now?
Right. Because then oftentimes it's going to involve a human, whether that's a human, whether that's you, the human, or it's somebody who's acting on, acting on behalf of a company that has, custodial access to this information, this account, this login, this whatever on your behalf. It's social engineering in one way or another, getting you to click on a thing or convincing somebody who has access to your thing to get into the thing,
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are coming up on 3 hours, and I think Matt has to pick up his kid.
I got to go pick up my kid here pretty soon.
We'll go through real quick. So if you're an NFT photographer and not a Mographer, or if you have a photography friend, family member, whatever, Punk6529 has a thread for photography, getting up to speed, and sort of what components of NFT and photography are unique to that medium versus animated mediums that we work in. So this is an interesting thread. I think it's very easy for people to make the art relationship in their head of one-of-one painting. Translates very good to an NFT. Photography is a little bit more nebulous. So interesting thread there.
I would like to add this in because it just came up in our feed. Is this tweet from Production Crate? Who?
That's fun.
Oh, hell yeah!
Slapping on the sticker.
Yeah, they've got some really nice assets. If you're not familiar with Production Crate, it's kind of like a CG Trader or Turbo Squid, whatever, where it's models, textures, HDRs, you name it.
All right, so here's some other accounts you got too, right?
Yep. So the last couple accounts. Giannis, his is at GreekDX. He's a pretty interesting takes on crypto stuff, crypto punks, whatnot. Looks to be arranging an NFT Athens thing. Like there was NFT NYC. So he's going to be putting together an NFT ATH, which is an amazing abbreviation. ATH being like all-time high, like a common crypto word. So NFT ATH, something to look at next summer if you're in Europe. Next person is Nathan. Another sort of crypto influencer, whatever you might want to call it, that I follow. This is the guy that I was following along as Wolf Game was unfolding a couple weekends ago. This guy was like super big into it, and he was like really hyped up and like super amped up about it. And although I didn't participate in Wolf Game, sort of living the experience through him as he was like kind of live tweeting as stuff was unfolding, that was an interesting. I found value in following him for that reason. Next person is Tropo Farmer. So he's kind of like the Bored Ape Yacht Club equivalent of that. Tropo is a well-known member of a number of profile picture communities, and he's skewing a little bit towards the sort of jokey side of things, where he'll joke that like if a project doesn't give him free mint stuff, then he'll like FUD that project, which he's saying tongue in cheek, but like it is sort of touching on the component of like people who get things for free, like because they're a celebrity or they have like a big following. It's kind of, there's like a weird dichotomy there where like you're promoting this thing but you got it for free, but then you're trying to tell other people to like buy the thing. Like when I say you, I just mean like any influencer type, because like there's no rules on like how people advertise this stuff. There's no like Better Business Bureau
regulation or anything.
Right. And then the last two accounts are like full on joke, like meme status. One is Satoshi NFT, so that's like, I think of it as like satire, like Satoshi Nakamoto being like the pseudonym that Bitcoin was created under. So he has this like little sketched profile picture. He just released a PFP collection of himself called MFers, just because like instead of using like the word like friend or whatever, he just like he calls everyone MFer, which is just kind of like funny. But last Friday, when crypto went through its like brief little flash crash, like Friday night overnight, Satoshi was just tweeting like banger after banger, just a lot of really funny stuff that I was following along with. And then the next and last person is Ratwell. If you've seen these weird cameos that people do, where like they'll hire like a actor or celebrity person on Cameo, and they'll make these poor people say like all these weird crypto words.
I've seen the Gilbert Gottfried one over and over again.
Some of this might be a little, who knows what we're getting into here. But yeah, Ratwell is one of the people who's kind of popular in that like sort of meme, edgy kind of like humor status. But there is a little bit of news peppered into there, like, takes on mainstream media when crypto antics bleed out into, your Fox News or MSNBC or whatever. Satoshi and Ratwell can oftentimes have some funny takes. So yeah, those are my links, and that's been 3 hours.
Rock on.
Nice.
I knew you'd be able to talk for 3 hours.
Easy.
I had no doubt. I guarantee you we could go for another 2 if I didn't have to go pick up my kid from school.
All good. I'm happy to be on anytime, guys.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you have,
Mark,
go ahead.
Mark just said a
Your
good
Discord.
comment. Yeah, I've got my little Discord server. As soon as this wraps, I'll tweet out another link to join my little server. It's mostly just like what I'm up to as an NFT artist. So if you want to, I'm not trying to replace the Slack or whatever where we talk about like render engines and like all that, So like I try to keep all that in the places that already exists. But if you want to follow my upcoming releases and whatnot, hop into the Discord, and I'll post a text blurb of everything I sent Matt and Dave to that server. Also, it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's get back to the regular show, I guess.
Let's do it.
End this up.
Drop.
Is this the fucking mic? This is exactly what I should be doing.